proceed. Accurate, George. Why did you get in that bag? We drink a little wine, no one knows us.
He said, Sarah, that's my name, don't wear it out. It's not intentional to fall asleep, I swear.
Not malicious.
I fell asleep.
Not malicious.
But then I fell asleep. I fell asleep.
Because it makes it sound like to me, like I'm being accused of something that was not intentional. I'm being accused of it.
Not intentional, no
Right where it is.
Right down there.
Yes.
You did forgot he was in the bag of dead and stuff. Not intentional.
I can't imagine her sister.
It will all make sense when she takes the stand. Oh, Sarah,
Now you all think that I had even more quote intent to do what I did, which was not intentional.
He said, Sarah, that's my name, don't wear it out. It's not intentional to fall asleep, I swear. But he said, Sarah. But he said, Sarah. We said, Sarah.
Hello everybody, Excited Utterance here. My name's Hella. Sarah. Oh, you know what, young? I'm getting more into this song as time goes by. I just can't help myself. It's a good song. I am proud of the song. And I have actually listened to a couple other Sarah songs that are getting around, and they're shit. Sorry. I'm going to be a bit of a narcissist now. I'm going to blow my own horn and just say for a moment that the other songs are shit. My song's better. So there you go. Listen to my song. Why has my song not gone completely fucking viral? It's very good. And it has a very good video as well. No one else has bothered to make a good video. Because their songs are shit. So there. Hey everyone. Hey Factual Lie. Hey Chloe Albert's Revenge. Sean, winner, chicken dinner. Nah. We don't want him doing cacciatore. No. Mr. J and cacciatore can go off and have some chicken dinner together. And they can... Yeah.
Hey.
How are you?
Good.
Good. It is a great song. I love it. I'm going to play it over and over again. There's a big festival coming up in Brisbane soon, a big dance festival, and I'm going to headline it.
Wow.
It's going to be my big song, and no one's going to have a clue what the hell that's all about. Hey Scott, how are you? Hey Brad, good to see you. Yes, let's get into it, guys.
You'll be very
right.
pleased to know they talk about narcissism today.
I caught a tiny little bit of that. I was just over in Sean's chat a moment ago, and I noticed that the that big N word came up.
Yes. Yeah, the hard R.
The harder.
Narcissist.
Yeah. Yes, narcissist. Yeah, I know. Hi, Rachel. How are you? Okay, so today is the day that the state fights back, doesn't it? Oh, well, the defense... No, not really. Like, the defense is still putting on their case.
Yeah.
But the state gets to kind of fight back against the wonderful day that Sarah had yesterday. Sarah did have a wonderful day. It was a good day, as she said. Sunday fun day, even.
Yes.
On a Tuesday. Was it Wednesday?
Yeah.
Tuesday or Wednesday for you yesterday?
Tuesday.
Yeah, what was my Wednesday? But anyway, yeah. Sorry, Hella, N-word. Yep. See, we don't really have that here so much. So, hello, Eamon. The Boone hug box stream. Yes, it is. And this is our winner from yesterday. Eamon's here. Winner from yesterday. Well done. See, we have all the winners coming in. Hopefully Ms. Boone will be a winner. Winner, chicken dinner. Not really. All right, let's get into it, guys. We might as well start. So, if you've seen some of it today, all good, doesn't matter. I don't really care about spoilers. And yeah, maybe we'll catch some more people as we go along. Who cares? DSM says anyone who streams is a narcissist.
I did feel like they were trying to diagnose me today, so.
Were they?
No. Well, maybe.
Look, I don't know how much I think of this whole DSM thing, so we'll see. A big wiener. Yeah, that's you. Okay, let's go. How many students? Oh, we got our male students back today. Just 2 though.
Judge scared off all the women.
Yeah. Okay, where's our sound? I'm hearing some noise. Oh, right. Lovely belt. Very pretty.
Oh, those two make such a cute little couple.
They do.
Really is sweet.
Yeah. Oh, it's Shelby sighting.
Shelby. Rawr.
There's no way there's body implants there.
Excuse me. Oh, I'm going to just bend over and show my boss my cleavage.
Oh, watch out.
Somebody wants a raise. I think she works for him too. Like that's not she doesn't work for Owens.
Yeah. No.
When I was checking out her LinkedIn.
Hey,
Is that what we're calling it nowadays?
How are you? Chat is analyzing you right now. They can analyze away. Will you change your Sunday show's name to Sunday Fun Day? Hell no. I love my Sunday show name. It's the best. All right, let's keep going. Let's get into it.
No, I want to look at Shelby some more.
Sorry.
Tease.
Well, there's no more Shelby sightings. Like, she's just there, but there's no more boobage.
You don't know that.
Oh, if there's boobage, we'll pause on it.
Okay. Deal. Whoa!
Hang on. Hang on.
Good morning, everyone.
Good Lord, girl. Nicole Muller, you're
There we go.
Oh my God, is Nicole Muller your hero?
Hang on. You can watch it again.
Good morning, everyone. Madam Clerk's going to go ahead and call the case to order.
Wait till the jury's in the room to do that.
Oh, dear. Lady. Shoot.
Jeez.
I do like how Lucy Lou's dressed as well, actually.
Who?
The
No, I know
other
who she
chick.
is.
Good morning. Can you state your full name and date of birth for the record for me?
Sarah Boone, 10-10-7-7.
Ms. Boone is seated at counsel's table wearing a dark gray suit jacket and a maroon blouse. She is in
put what
custody.
Shelby's
However, she's
wearing
not
on the
in
record?
restraint- in any restraints, so we will be continuing to stand as our jury enters and exits. State, are there any housekeeping matters we need to address this morning before we bring in our panel? Defense.
What is wrong with us?
What is wrong with
In addition to the
you?
one I received this morning. Yes, sir.
Dr. Harper did get last night after midnight. She's over the hotel, but in addition, we may recall the phone extraction expert. She's no longer with us.
Okay, understood. All right, are we ready to bring in our panel?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
All right,
we're
very
really
good.
going to
Let's go ahead and
recall
bring
the
in our
phone extraction expert.
Yep.
Interesting. Look, I don't think that jacket suits Lucy Lou very well. Like, it doesn't fit her properly. It's a bit boxy.
Oh.
Don't eat your glasses, Beck. I gotta say, he hasn't really been switched on the entire time. I don't think he's right into this whole idea of doing this whole pro se thing.
No.
Not pro se, sorry.
Pro bono.
Pro bono thing.
Yeah. Hey, we need you for a trial. All right, sure. How much is it paid? How much you paid?
0.
Oh.
Exposure.
Hey, if we win and Lifetime picks up the Sarah Boone story, we'll cut you in for a 10th. Or I guess Hallmark now.
10th.
You just know there's going to be a Hallmark movie as Sarah Boone.
A Hallmark movie. Oh, yeah. I'm surprised there's not one already.
And the
Been going on
executive,
4.5 years. You'd
or
think
the
that something
creative,
would be done.
Creative producer Lee Owens.
Members of the jury, good morning. Welcome back to 12 Alpha of the Orange County Courthouse. I hope you had a great evening. If you could, again, just by a show of hands, you complied with the court's instructions for the overnight break. Record reflect all hands have been raised. Members of the jury, at this point in time, the defense is going to continue with their evidence and testimony presentation. And I'm going to ask them to call their first witness at this time. Mr. Owens, you may proceed, sir.
At this time, the defense calls Deputy Ramirez. Delgado.
That ain't Mr. Owens. It's just like this ominous suitcase in the corner thing. Like, it's legit the elephant in the room.
How great would it be if somebody put a speaker in there in the middle of the night and then just went to like the other courtroom and just started talking from it? Help me! You let me out! Sarah! Let me out!
You can be seated. Can you please state and spell your name for the record for me?
Hello, Emu.
My name is Jessica, first name Jessica, Jessica. First last name is Ramirez, Ramirez. Second last name is Delgado, Delgado.
Thank you, ma'am. You may inquire, sir.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, they did that already.
I'm a reserve
Yeah.
deputy with the Orange County Sheriff's Office.
3 of them got 15K.
Employed with the
They
sheriff.
all got 15K.
Back on July the 25th of 2018, how were you employed at that time?
I was a full-time deputy sheriff for the
How'd she
agency.
get her hair like
On that
that?
date, ma'am, did you have the occasion due to your duties to report or to go to 4748 France Lane, apartment number 3?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall what you were going there for?
Yes, sir. I was a backup deputy for a call involving a male kicking a female in the face, so it came out as a domestic call.
Okay. And was it another officer who also responded?
Yes, sir. He was the primary.
Okay. Ma'am, while you were there, did you have contact with Sarah Boone?
Yes, sir.
While having contact with Miss Boone, were you able to observe any injuries?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. She had swelling and bruising in her right eye.
Aw.
Ma'am, were you able to make contact with Mr. George Torres?
Yes, sir.
Were you
I
able to
want.
know his
Was that the big black eye?
Yes, sir. He had red markings and some abrasions around his neck.
Ma'am, at a certain point in time, did you place Miss Boone
really?
under arrest?
Yes, sir. I detained her and placed her in my vehicle.
Ma'am, at that time, do you recall or remember Miss Boone asking you, "Why am I in trouble?"
Yes, sir.
And without saying what you said, but did you respond to her?
Yes, sir.
After that, ma'am, do you remember Miss Boone asking you, "Why?" Because I fucking fought back.
Yes, sir.
Ooh.
Right, ma'am, one moment.
Yes, sir.
No further questions.
Thank you. Any cross-examination?
During the course of your investigation, you or the other responding deputies spoke to Mr. Torres as well?
Yes, sir.
After concluding all of your investigation, which involved talking to both Mr. Torres and to Ms. Boone and making your observations of the two of them, did you all make final decisions about how to handle your investigation?
The other deputy, which at the time was Deputy Zito, was the one that made that determination.
Okay. But collectively, what you all looked at was statements from Ms. Boone and Mr. Torres, correct?
Yes, sir.
And your physical observations of both persons?
Yes.
And then whatever else you may have observed on scene?
Yes, sir.
And do you take into account people's demeanor when they are giving you statements when assessing their credibility?
Yes, sir.
No other questions?
Any redirect examination?
No, Your Honor.
Can this witness be released?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, okay, so the point would be that
Let's call your next witness.
someone really saw her with those bruises, right?
Alden.
Yeah.
Yeah, never tell the police you fought back. Never tell the police freaking anything.
Yeah. Okay, what does Uncle Fester have to say?
Sir, good morning. Can you state and spell your name for the record?
John Alden, John-Alden.
All right, thanks, sir. You may be seated. Mr. Henderson, you may inquire.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Sir, how are you employed? How are you employed?
You
I'm employed with the Orange County
people.
Sheriff's Office as a corporal.
Back on August the 28th of 2019, how were you employed?
I was a deputy in the Uniform Patrol Division in Sector 2.
As a part of your job duties that day, did you have the occasion to respond to 4748 France Lane?
Good Lord,
number
is-
3?
Yes.
Ears
was
have
the
never
purpose?
recovered from wearing a
There
mask.
ended up being a battery call.
And, sir, were you the lead officer on this case?
Yes.
Were there any other backup officers there with you?
I believe so.
Sir, on that date, August the 28th of 2019, did you come in contact with Sarah Boone?
Yes.
Sir, on that date, did you observe any injuries on Sarah Boone?
I observed redness on the left side of her neck and what to be an old injury to her right eye.
Sir, on August 28th of 2019, did you come in contact with George Torres?
Yes.
And Did you notice any injuries on Mr. Torres?
Yes, he had some redness on it by his left eye.
Ooh, beautiful. That's cool.
Sir, on that day, was Mr. Torres placed under arrest?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any cross-examination?
Yes.
Is it fair to say
All
that
right.
Mr. Torres had quite a few marks on him?
From my report, I remember marking the left by redness by his left eye.
And did you have a body-worn camera activated when you responded to this call?
I believe so.
Right. And so that would be the best evidence of both video and audio as to what occurred while you were on scene.
It would, especially since this happened 5 years ago now.
And did Mr. Torres refuse to say what happened that day?
He did.
Based on the conclusion of your investigation, which involved talking to Ms. Boone and attempting to talk to Mr. Torres, as well as your visual observations of both them and the scene, is that how you all reach your conclusions?
Yes.
No other questions?
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Can this witness be released?
All right.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr.
Bye,
Jay.
Uncle Fest.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
She stabbed herself.
Defense, you can call your next witness.
I don't know why you wouldn't believe that this stuff happened. Like, yes, she lies a lot, but so what? Like,
Yeah.
there's proof. So she would have had to have, like, made all this stuff up in
Just my witness.
advance.
Yeah.
She would have legit had to have made up all of these injuries, and they look like pretty goddamn painful injuries. She would have had to have made all that up, taken photos of them, and also all these police and neighbors and stuff would have had to have seen it all. It's a bit far-fetched that it didn't happen. Really?
Defense, you can call your next witness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Judge, at this time, the defense calls Deputy Constable. Or Detective, excuse me.
Yeah, she's drunk a lot and a nut job, but doesn't mean that these things didn't happen, and it also doesn't mean the jury has to take that into account regarding the actual night. They don't.
God, she must be so frustrating to work with.
Who shall be? Yeah.
No, Boone.
Good morning again. Could you state your full name and date of birth for the record?
think
I'm
she's
sorry, full name and
lovely.
spell it for us.
I wonder if she knows Megan Hall.
CHELSEY. Last name is KOEPS.
God, not her again.
More.
No.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Hey,
In relation
Chloe.
to this case, on February the 26th of 2020, did you have the occasion to interview Abraham Moreno?
Yes, I did.
Was that interview recorded, ma'am?
Yes, it was.
Do you remember as part of that interview that Mr. Moreno
Yeah, Barbara.
tell you that he had had contact with
Barbara,
Sarah Boone
hello.
on February the 24th of 2020?
Are you asking the night of the incident when police were called out?
Yes, the next morning
The day that we were called.
that you were called out.
Okay.
the 24th.
So yes, he did have contact with her, but it wasn't in the morning. It was while we were there.
While you were there?
Yes.
Okay. What time did you get there? That's probably what's going on.
I got there around 14:20 hours, which would be 2:20 in the afternoon.
Okay. So the afternoon on the 24th.
No, it was later. I recall, I believe I was doing paperwork in my vehicle, so it would have been at some point during the investigation, but it wasn't, I didn't notice him until, I'm not sure if I noticed him until before or after Sarah was interviewed.
All right. But to his interview part, the interview, did he tell you in the interview that he had had contact with Miss Boone on that day?
Yes, he did.
Did he tell you at that time that Miss Boone had made a statement to him?
Yes, he did.
Do you remember what that statement was?
I don't wish to quote what he stated. So I don't know the exact verbiage, but he basically replayed what, I'm not sure if he replayed what exactly occurred that day, but I do know he mentioned something about, she mentioned being dragged down the stairs a couple days prior.
Did he say to you during that interview that Sarah Boone told us that a couple of days ago they had gotten into a fight where he grabbed her by her hair and dragged her down the steps?
I would assume that he's reading my report, and that does sound similar to what my report should say.
So this statement was given on the 27th of February. I'm sorry, the 26th of February. Would you
Yes.
agree with that?
Yes, I would.
Okay. The contact and the statement that Ms. Boone made to Mr. Moreno was on the 24th of February. Is that correct?
Repeat the question, I'm sorry.
When Mr. Moreno is saying that Ms. Boone came up to him and made this statement that we just talked about?
Yes.
That was on February the 24th. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So when she said a couple of days ago, that would have brought it back to February the 22nd. Is that correct?
Potentially, yes.
Potentially, but not intentionally.
Ma'am, during that interview with you, did Mr. Moreno ever indicate to you that when he had contact with Ms. Boone on the 24th, that Sarah Boone told
Yeah,
him what
no.
happened was an accident? And did he say that Sarah Boone stated that she was teaching him a lesson and things got out of hand and that she fell asleep?
I don't recall the entirety of that being accurate. Yeah, I don't recall the entirety of what he just said being accurate.
Do you remember him saying that at all?
He did say that she had, I believe he said on the recording, passed out. So that's why, like, part of the statements might be accurate, but
Ma'am, would it refresh your memory if you were to see the recorded statement?
his recorded statement,
Yes.
transcription?
Yes.
Sure, yeah, great.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Ma'am, take your time. Wait for that.
Okay,
When you ready, just let me know.
okay. I don't recall all the statements that you asked, or the way you asked it, but
Would it help if I repeat it?
sure, yeah.
Okay.
You asked, like, you said multiple statements, so
Yes, ma'am.
this was like an 11-minute interview.
All right. The statement would be that Sarah Boone stated to Mr. Moreno that she was teaching him a lesson and things got out of hand and that she fell asleep. And I'm wanting to know
Did
if
you say, okay, I thought I heard you say passed out the first time. I'm not sure if you said passed out or fell asleep.
fell asleep.
Fell asleep, okay.
And what I'm asking is there any indication that he told you that statement on the date of that interview on the 26th?
Sorry, I'm trying to go to the part where we talked about that.
Yes, ma'am. Take your time.
I'm
I
out.
wonder if she's a narcissist.
She could be.
She could be. Narcissist. Guilty. Yeah, she's a lead investigator.
Okay, so, like I had stated, there were certain things that I thought was accurate from your statement. He stated, I don't really, do I just read exactly what it says? Do you need, like, the number next to it or anything?
Yes, I have no problem if you read what he said.
Okay, then she,
Approach.
so sorry.
It's okay.
Yes, sorry.
Ma'am, and anywhere in that interview, do you see reference to this statement? That Sarah stated that she was teaching him a lesson and things got out of hand and that she fell asleep.
Okay. I see what's going
No
on.
to the two parts, the first two parts of your question. I heard passed out the first time you asked me this question, and that's why I said that part of it was accurate, because he did say that she passed out in his statement. That was what Sarah told him.
Okay, did she say she was teaching him a lesson? Is that in there?
No,
And things got out of hand. Is that in there?
no, I don't recall that.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
All right. So she must be referring. I missed it, but he must be referring to the interview with Abraham Moreno.
And again, ma'am, this interview was on February the 26th of 2020. Is that correct?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay. Because remember on the
cross-examination.
stand, Abraham Moreno, who is actually an old friend of George. Let's not forget that. That never really came
All
out.
right, thank you. Can this witness be released?
Yes, Your Honor.
State.
He made up a new fact, and that is that Sarah told him that she was teaching him a lesson.
Oh,
When-
yeah.
Yeah.
Or
And
just a neighbor.
no, he's not. Well, I mean, we haven't quite ascertained whether or not he lived on Lucille Lane or whether he was just being interviewed on Lucille Lane. But he's the handyman also, right? But regardless, he's known George for years. He's known George since way back when they lived in a different town, right? So he's older than George, but that he's known George, and they would drink together and stuff, right? Now, here's the deal. That never really came out in court. It was it came out in the actual audio, and I don't know why this guy here would not play the audio, because the audio was fairly clear. It didn't really say anything terrible about Sarah at all. In fact, he should have just played the audio. But the audio, there was never any mention of her teaching him a lesson. He added that on the stand. He added that so clearly on the stand, and he didn't really get called out for it properly. And so her being brought back, she was able to go back through her notes and go, no, okay, sure. There was not a mention of that. So, yes, he's the superintendent that I accused of being stoned on the stand. Yeah, he could very well have been stoned on the stand. Disproving the teaching him a lesson part. That's what it's about. Yep.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and he had reason to do that because he's biased, because he's friends with the dude. He's not just the superintendent.
Witness.
Yes, they drank together.
All right. Thank you.
It was medicinal. Ah, Lucy. Yeah, no, I don't like that jacket. What's happening? Oh, what is going on? Oh, okay, they had some troubles.
I do. Doctor, good morning. Could you state and spell your name for the record for us?
Michael Brandon, B-R-A-N-N-O-N.
Thank you. Counselor, you may inquire.
Dr. Brandon, good morning.
Good morning.
Sup,
Right, having
Jenny?
just traveled from Miami to Orlando.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
It was a good drive.
Would you please describe for the jury your background, training, and experience, both in forensic psychology as well as battered women syndrome?
Sure. So
Whoa,
I'm a psychologist,
here we go.
licensed in the state of Florida. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. That's from a university called Nova University. I also have a master's degree in psychology. I received that in 1980, also in psychology. And I received my doctoral degree in psychology after a year internship where I worked with severely mentally ill individuals in Hialeah, Florida. In 1988, I finished my degree requirements for my doctorate in psychology. And in 1990, I was licensed as a psychologist. I've been operating as a psychologist since then, since 1990. Originally, I started off doing the work that most people kind of think about when they think about psychologists, doing therapy, counseling with people, helping them through with their problems, things like that. In 1994, I began on a career almost quite accidentally as a forensic psychologist when I testified in my first case in front of a jury. And from that time on, I've been doing mostly forensic psychology. My practice very quickly changed from that time on. I'm currently the co-director of the Institute for Behavioral Sciences and the Law.
Well,
and
he's
anywhere
old.
between 80 and 90% of all my work now is related to some legal or court-related matter in the ways in which mental health interfaces or impacts or helps to give opinions about various legal issues. I've taught rather extensively in the area of forensic psychology. I teach to mostly legal audiences, but oftentimes too I speak to groups of psychology students wanting to sit up here and do what I'm doing as well. I make long drives and then come up here and talk to people
He does
about
seem
cases.
lovely.
I also currently I'm on the staff, the adjunct faculty staff for the School of Psychiatry at Florida Atlantic University. I help to train their forensic psychiatrists, so not just psychologists, but psychiatrists in terms of doing this work as a psychologist or as a psychiatrist, a mental health professional who gives opinions in the courtroom.
And are you also required to update your educational background and knowledge as a forensic psychologist?
Yes, sir. So sure. So every 2 years, we're required to get 40 continuing education credits to maintain our license. And part of that is we have to, on a regular basis, update our work in domestic violence or battered women syndrome. So we have to take those courses. We're all required, whether you're a forensic psychologist or not, to take that coursework. So as part of our requirements, we also have to take separate coursework in regards to domestic violence, as a general term, or intimate partner violence. But along with that comes discussion as well with battered spouse, or what's oftentimes called battered person syndrome now.
And I apologize. I'm kind of bouncing around here, Doctor. I apologize again.
Gosney probably does know
Just
him.
Exactly what do you mean by forensic psychology?
So forensic psychology is a division of psychology. Most people don't think about that as often when they think about psychologists. But forensic psychologists are individuals who have degrees in psychology who are working to help to answer questions that come up in the legal system. It could be in criminal cases, like we're here for today, answering various criminal questions, giving opinions about those questions. Or it could be in other settings, like family settings, divorce proceedings, or sometimes civil settings like personal injury, someone's claiming some emotional damage or something has happened to them. So forensic psychology is really the way that we use the science of psychology to help give opinions about various legal matters.
Now, what is the DSM or the DSM-5?
So the DSM stands for Diagnostic
too.
Statistical Manual. It's kind of our code book, if you will, to help us to know what the different symptoms are for different mental health disorders, whether it's major depression or schizophrenia or anxiety. So it gives us a code book of here's the criteria you have to meet in order to have that diagnosis. And then we're able to utilize that in terms of either treatment, so even insurance billing, but being able to inform patients too about what condition we think that they're suffering from. It's been updated many times over the years. It started at just DSM, and now it's at the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5th edition, text revised. So we've gone through a lot of revisions over the years to try to fine tune in an empirical or scientific way what the elements are, if you will, of various mental health conditions.
Now, you've been asked to testify today in regards to battered women's syndrome. Is the battered women's syndrome identified or located within the DSM-5?
So it is not. It is not a diagnostic category in the DSM-5 or other coding books as well. There's others besides the DSM. That's just the most popular one. But it's not a formal diagnosis that it is contained within that book, that classification manual that I just told you about.
Within your field of forensic psychology, however, is there a subcategory that is located within the DSM-5 that experts would recognize as a DSM diagnosis?
Yes, sir.
And what is that, sir?
So that category would be in the trauma section of the DSM-5 TR. There's a whole category on trauma disorders, and it's most closely related to something that we call post-traumatic stress disorder. That isn't the only trauma disorder, but that's the one that what used to call battered women's syndrome, now I refer to as battered person syndrome, but all of it really is more connected to a trauma disorder like post-traumatic
He
stress
must
disorder.
be a narcissist.
You testify on criminal matters. Do you also testify? You indicated also on personal injury cases and emotional. That would be civil, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In your experience, you testified as an expert, as a forensic psychologist. You testified for, and today you're testifying for the defense, or were called by the defense. Do you also testify for the state of Florida or other states within this country?
Yes to both of those. I've testified in other states, but I also testify for both prosecution, the state or government, depending if it's federal or if it's a state case, and also for the defense. So I really get appointments and hired by both sides.
How many times have you testified?
Well,
Sure, I saw him on the Golden Girls once.
1,500 times. It's over that.
Dating
way over that now. That
Blanche.
was a few years ago. I testify in a lot of different kinds of hearings and trials over the course of, mostly in Florida, but in other states as well.
Now,
Just want to Blanche's
the
house.
fact that there is a special jury instruction that's been recognized by the Florida Supreme Court.
Approach.
Right? Like, legit. Blanche definitely was banging a dude that looked like that. And Dorothy was jealous. He's lovely.
Names for what you're describing, in particular, battered spouse syndrome.
Well, we talk about it in terms of trauma disorders, like post-traumatic stress disorder, but the way when it's applied to the legal system, it's called battered wife. That was the original terminology for it, battered wife syndrome or battered person
define
syndrome.
what a woman
so
is?
it really depends on your setting. So in this setting, we oftentimes talk about this particular condition that I've been asked to talk about today, is really referred to as battered spouse syndrome.
And have you been asked to give your opinion as a legal expert on battered spouse syndrome?
Yes, sir.
How frequently have you been asked to do that?
I've been involved in about 100 cases of just that alone. I've been involved in some sort of testimony about 50 times.
And
Your
you
partner would be
indicated
better.
that You testified for the state, you testified for the defense, you testified
Or
for
hoe.
federal cases. Could you break down the percentage?
Battered hoe syndrome.
Times you testified for the state versus testifying for the defense?
It's really close in terms of last time we looked at it was about 50-50. On most cases, like for instance, if there's a case that involves battered spouse, potentially battered spouse or battered wife syndrome, I'm usually called by the defense first because they raise the issue. If you're called by the prosecution, whether it be federal or state, what oftentimes happens is it's in response to a defense expert that's been called. So do I agree or disagree with that other expert? So I'm usually, the call usually comes first from the defense, but in terms of who I'm hired by, it's pretty even. It's about 50-50.
Now,
In this
time,
case,
I don't profit the witnesses,
battered
but
manlet
expert in the field of
cis.
forensic psychology.
Approach.
No, hoe is all inclusive, see, right? Hoe works for, like, if you're in some sort of friendship with benefits relationship,
Wait.
spouses, partners. Hoe just works all around. So if you're battering someone, they're your
Objection
hoe.
still sustained. Mr. Beck, you may continue.
He's going to say that
That's
she
battered spouse
qualifies for the battered
Defense.
spouse
To
defense.
your
That's
knowledge,
that's his point.
Yes.
That's why he's there.
Sustained.
Can you describe the classic systemology wherein an individual might necessarily suffer and then exhibit symptoms of battered women's syndrome?
Yes. So battered spouse syndrome is usually a woman's response. Doesn't have to be, but that's the classic historical research went into how women respond in situations in which there's intimate partner violence when they've been the victim of violence. Now we know, of course, in other kinds of relationships, men can be a victim of it as well, as whether it's a heterosexual or homosexual relationship, that both men and women can be victims. But we still know the majority of those individuals that are diagnosed with that condition or given that condition, classified with that condition, are women. We do know that it's a reaction, a strategy that's developed by the person who's being abused to someone who's abusing them in an intimate partner situation. And essentially what they're doing is they've made a determination that they can't effectively escape from the abuse. They can't just leave for some reason. They feel in danger or they've been threatened if they leave that something bad will happen to them. So it's a cognitive or thinking strategy on the part of the person being abused that I have to develop some coping skills or ways of protecting myself or maybe even loved ones as well from some form of imminent violence or danger or lethality. Something bad will happen to me if I don't develop a way of handling this abuse, this constant abuse that's coming towards me. So the battered wife syndrome is really a way of thinking. It's a psychological change that happens with a victim in terms of the way they cope and strategize to stay safe for themselves and other loved ones as well oftentimes.
I'm going to ask a really silly question, if I may, Doctor. I don't know if you noticed a bruise across the bridge of my nose this morning.
I did see that when I came in. Yes, sir.
Okay. This weekend,
My hoe battered me.
hypothetically, if an individual was digging
Sarah Boone did it.
cut his nose, to rip his nose wide open, would you, as a forensic psychologist, anticipate, or psychologist in general, anticipate that there might be a physical or psychological reaction in response to that degree of trauma?
So I don't know if it would be trauma or not. It could be, depending on the degree of the injury and the pain and things like that. But certainly you'd view that garbage can differently as you approached it. So it changes your psychology or the way that you look at that particular situation or that particular object. So by viewing it differently, you may engage in different behaviors. You may approach it differently. You may have somebody else approach it. You may approach it with both hands up. So it changes your behavior and your thinking about that garbage can.
Does that also apply to interpersonal relationships?
So it certainly can. No two people always react the same way to every situation. One person's trauma is not a trauma to another person. But for people who do develop battered spouse syndrome, they do begin.
Wait. He's saying that if the garbage can come up and hit you, you would think differently towards that garbage can.
You would react differently around it in the future.
Fair.
Yeah.
If a garbage can come up and hit me, I'd fucking think differently about that goddamn garbage can. I'd be like, get the hell away from me.
Yeah.
You possessed garbage can.
Makes sense.
What? Did he just really say that?
Yeah.
Did he say that you see the bruise on my nose, a garbage can came and got me?
Well, it's an example.
That's a stupid example. I don't like Beck.
To change the way they view the person who's abusing them and what they have to do in order to maintain either their life or their safety, their physical safety in terms of their behavior and interactions with that person.
Now, is there a specific set of criteria that a psychologist, forensic psychologist, would necessarily rely upon in attempting to make a diagnosis or an assessment of battered women syndrome?
Yes, sir.
And what are those criteria?
Well, you'd want to see one if some type of abuse has occurred. That abuse can be physical, it can be sexual, it can be emotional, or it can just be the threat of abuse or bad things that's going to happen to you. So there has to be something bad that's happened or that's threatened to be happening over a period of time. So abuse has to be present in order for this to be underway. Without abuse, there's no battered wife syndrome. But that's not enough. There also has to be what's called coercive control. Coercive control is really keeping the person's social interactions, overseen on a regular basis, controlling money, controlling preferences, even TV preferences, sometimes social media, looking at social media that the person is accessing or looking at, who they're talking to on Facebook, who they're texting. So it's a combination of abuse and coercive control that results in a person feeling victimized, but that's still not enough. That person then has to feel like they can't escape from that. They've either been told, if you leave me, you're going to die, or a family member is going to be harmed. Your children, your mother,
Garbage can came and got him.
As a result of that, they develop strategies to cope with that, acquiescing, pleasing, doing anything they're asked to do, demeaning themselves, allowing themselves to be controlled. All of the things that would fend off, if you will, some abuse or attack.
Dolly, did the garbage can come and get you?
It did.
It did?
Yeah, I was scared, but I fought it off.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hoe.
It is.
You okay?
Oh, yeah. Just had chicken trousers.
Or threat to them or someone who surrounds them. So those would be the components that you would need to have, and that dance continues to go on usually repeatedly throughout the course of that relationship.
So I think what you're describing is, in a sense, a subjective nature to the syndrome that's being described.
It's both objective and subjective. So objective in terms of the facts, like what's really happening. A person's being abused, they're being told certain things, there's control over them. But then the subjective part is the person's interpretation of that, their perception of that. So there's really both going on. They have to kind of work together in order for this syndrome to be formalized and properly diagnosed.
You indicated that there sometimes may be some defense mechanisms or strategies that are devised by the battered individual, the abused individual.
Yes, sir.
In your experience and your training, do controlled substances, alcohol, drugs, frequently appear in your analysis or assessment?
Yes, and the way they appear is they can appear either from the abuser or the abused or both. What can happen from the abuser standpoint is they may only be abusive, or the abuse may become worse if they abuse substances. From the abused standpoint, it may be self-medication. It may be a way of coping with the anxiety that there's going to be something bad that potentially could happen to them or somebody else. It's kind of a way of dealing with walking on the eggshells. So if I use substances, that can deaden the pain, if you will, for me, or help me to forget about it. So it's oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes part of either the abuser's behavior or the abused behavior.
Do they, in your experience, do they, on occasion, actually defend the individual that is abusing them?
That's a very frequent part of the syndrome. Not always, but it's very frequent. It's why interviewing them becomes difficult sometimes, because they're used to explaining away their behavior, the abuser's behavior, my black eye, my missing tooth, his screaming and yelling in the background while I'm talking to mom on the phone. So they're used to making excuses for it. It's part of the coping strategy, trying to explain away this behavior. He's had a bad day. She's, really upset about something else that's going on. She's really never like this at any other time. So defending that person is oftentimes a part of the battered spouse syndrome, and getting the person who's been abused to get them to stop defending them so they can talk about the actual abuse becomes a challenge.
Now,
Well, hello, Emily's dismantling Delulus.
I assume for the diagnosis that's being applied. What is a rule out?
A rule out in our parlance says that we should consider these things before we look at other diagnoses. So, for instance, if we're going to consider schizophrenia, we should rule out substance abuse first, because oftentimes some drugs can create hallucinations and delusions and psychotic symptoms. So there's always rule out, just like there are for medical conditions. So look for this before you consider this, is really what a rule out is.
Are there specific rule
That's
outs
all right.
for battered women's syndrome or PTSD?
Sure, so there's rule outs for everything, because you're considering a number of different conditions before you make a differential diagnosis, or you pick that's the one that I think best fits this person. So yes, there's rule outs for both of those.
For my sake, what is a differential diagnosis?
That's how you decide which ones, so whether it's your medical doctor, your psychologist, whoever, it's how they pick the right diagnosis. So you're going through kind of a card catalog in your head, and you're saying, all right, there's symptoms of this, but that's also consistent with symptoms of that. So is it schizophrenia? Is it bipolar disorder? Now I have to ask more questions. It's a decision tree. And that decision tree helps you to inform the person and either make a diagnosis in a legal setting or help to treat them clinically.
Now, if the individual...
Did he say decision tree or dysentery?
Decision tree.
It's a decision tree.
Yeah, not dysentery. Dysentery.
Okay. I really like him. I think he's way cool. And I believe you actually, where was it? Emily. So this man is highly educated and knowledgeable. He helps to decide if Sarah is classified as battered wife syndrome. He's allegedly a genius in his field. I totally believe that. I think he sounds extremely knowledgeable, and you can tell just by how comfortable he is speaking on his subject matter that he's clearly taught a lot, lectured, written probably tons of books and published in his field and stuff like that. You can just tell he's super comfortable speaking on this subject. So I would not be surprised if he's very well known in his field. So but what is also kind of interesting to me, and I've got a message here from David, actually, he can't make it at the moment, but I've got a message here. He saw this earlier, and he said, watch carefully because his testimony could be taken either way.
Yeah.
So it could prove that either Sarah or George could be the battered spouse.
I think he gave the state a lot to use in closing.
Yeah, so is he good for the defense? Who knows?
He wasn't particularly
really
damaging in what he said, but I think the state's going to be able to really, if they do a good closing, it'll hurt Sarah.
Yeah. No, he said deciduous trees. Oh, okay. Oops.
The psychologist who's doing the evaluation identifies the presence of certain rule outs. What is their response professionally to those rule outs in establishing or assessing the patient?
You have to go down a decision tree. We all kind of do decision trees in our mind every day about what we should do or shouldn't do in certain situations. It happens automatically. It's more structured when you're doing it professionally.
Okay, David.
So if you have a concern about substances, then you would kind of take that track and you'd have to answer a lot of questions.
What we're going to do is mention David's
so
name.
You want to know what kind of substances, how often are they using those substances, what kind of effect have those substances had on them before. I just picked one of many possible rule outs there. But every one of them you'd have to explore or ask additional questions because, of course, you want to come up with the wrong diagnosis. Because in a legal setting, that leads you to a bad opinion. In a clinical setting, it leads to bad treatment.
Now, I want to go back just a second. We talked about the subjective nature of the abused individual's understanding of what's happening. Is this subjective, or does the experience that they have suffered result in, on occasion, their experiencing or their anticipating or assuming or imagining a threat that others may not?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Preach. Oh, people love it when she smiles.
Objection is sustained.
No speaking objections in this
Doctor,
courtroom.
From what you described this morning, I think we're talking about a complex and sophisticated process for assessing and diagnosing PTSD, battered women, the matters that you described. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
And in this instance, this particular matter regarding the state versus Sarah Boone, were you approached about the possibility of doing an assessment as to Sarah Boone?
Approach.
If I were the state, I'd be wanting to make sure that it always was mentioned as battered spouse, never battered woman. Like, that would be, I'd be objecting every time because the Beck, the lawyer for the defense, has said battered woman a couple times, and that's really bad because the jury, as David has said, they could take it either way. They could take this defense witness either way. It doesn't have to be battered woman. It can be battered spouse, right? So if they take his testimony the other way and go, hang on, maybe it's George that was battered, but all along they keep peppering in this wording of battered woman, then that's an old term, right? So if I was the state, I'd be saying, no, the term is battered spouse. You must use the term battered spouse.
Yeah.
So maybe because we can't hear what the objections are, maybe at some point that's what's going to happen. Don't know. Oh, isn't he cute? I reckon he's got lots of grandchildren and they just think he's the best.
Assessment.
Hang on.
You are retained to do an evaluation in these matters. What is your practice in regards to the assessment proceedings, the assessment efforts?
Well, I'd first want to know what type of an assessment that it is, because there's different methods of approach that you'd use to analyze and be able to give an opinion on whatever question's being asked of you. So the very first goal for me as a forensic psychologist is to isolate what the question is. So what are they asking me to do? Because I want to know, A, can I do that? Am I qualified to do that, or should I refer that to somebody else? Or B, is that something I'm going to have enough time to do and enough resources to do? Then the next thing I would do is start asking questions about specifically what do you already have or what can you get to help me answer this question. So right away I'd start to find out what's available. As forensic psychologists, we're supposed to do comprehensive evaluations of whatever the legal issue or question is, and it's supposed to rely on multiple sources of information. So depending again upon the question, I'm trying to then define early on what are those multiple pieces of information I'm going to need to help to try to give an opinion, an educated opinion about that matter.
Have you done an assessment in this particular case?
No, sir.
Can you tell us very briefly whether that was your decision?
Objection, relevance.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine. Let's move on.
Objection sustained.
In your experience, doctor,
Thank you very much.
can battered women syndrome rear its ugly head, for instance, when there are threats to other members
See, there
of the
he goes
family,
again.
Two-legged or four. So yes, that's very common, that it's not just the person. It increases the terror from someone who's doing the abuse to mention other family members that they might also suffer abuse. So whether it's emotional or physical, those type of things are very common. Not always, but it's very common in the course of domestic violence cases or intimate partner violence cases.
And that fear that's developed by the abused individual may exist contemporaneously with other issues, alcoholism, schizophrenia, and the like. Is that correct?
Yes, so they can all be combined together, and certainly that increases if there's other family members that are threatened or live in the same home or close by. That can increase the terror, and the purpose of that is to
Hello,
increase
Lexi.
control, to make sure the abuser has more control over the person who's being abused.
1 second, Your Honor. May I?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Cowpoke.
In doing an assessment, doctor, do you look at outside materials?
Yes, sir, always.
And what kind of outside materials do you necessarily review in order to make this assessment?
Specifically to battered woman syndrome?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So specific to this, you'd want to look at a lot of different sources of information because you're trying to, A, make a diagnosis if there's a trauma-related disorder, but you're also trying to figure out if there's the other elements necessary to make a diagnosis as well, like abuse that's been chronic over a period of time, and if the person feels they can't leave that situation, and if other people have been threatened. So you'd want to know things like not only what the facts are of a particular incident, usually some crime that's been committed, but you'd want to know the history of those behaviors. Has anyone else seen those? Are there people you can talk to? Friends, neighbors, bosses, anybody who's seen or heard of this abuse before? Have there been medical visits where the person has actually been damaged and shown up, made some other excuse, they slipped or fell or whatever it might be? You'd want to do psychological testing as a forensic psychologist because we have very good tests that help us to determine whether someone's suffering from a trauma-based disorder or not. You'd want to know if the person who'd been accused of the crime for this type of evaluation made any statements to the police. If they did, you'd want to hear that statement. Or has there been a 911 call or calls? If that's happened, you'd want to hear that too. So any evidence you could collect, these are some of those questions I was talking to you about before, you'd want to ask the person who's trying to hire you in the beginning, well, tell me what you have, because you'd want to see whether or not you're going to be able to make this analysis or not. So it's not good enough just to talk to the person, because that's just one form of information. It's almost like being a behavioral detective, if you will, as a forensic psychologist, because we're trying to get as much evidence wrapping around our interview with the person as possible to be able to guide our questions, but inform us and see whether there's what we call convergent validity. It's a fancy way of saying, does everything agree with each other? Does everything connect in a way that it all sort of makes sense? Or are these strange conflicting pieces of evidence that we need to explain away, or it just doesn't fit the criteria? So it's a rather comprehensive and complex evaluation that has to be conducted to come up with this. And the final piece I'd say about it is that because oftentimes the abused person is defending still the person that they've oftentimes committed a crime against, it takes a bit of time to get to where you need to go. With all victims of trauma, whether you're talking about situations where you're doing therapy or you're doing an analysis in this type of setting, a criminal setting, it usually takes some time to break through that and get them to trust you to talk about the trauma, but to stop defending the person and talk about the abuse and how they felt about the abuse. Your goal, if you will, is to be able to see what's happening in that situation through the abused person's eyes. If you look at it through your eyes, often it doesn't seem to make sense. But if you look at it through their eyes, if it meets the criteria for a battered spouse, then you can better understand their world and what they're dealing with.
And real briefly, some of the things that you are evaluating when you examine, particularly the individual themselves, you're looking for anxiety and or fear,
Yes.
low self-esteem.
Yes.
Are you looking for depression?
Yes.
Are you looking for any form of social or interpersonal withdrawal?
Withdrawal, especially if it's forced withdrawal, controlled withdrawal, if there's consequences to socializing with my family, my friends, calling them on the phone, texting them. So especially in that context.
Stockholm Syndrome.
Sure, that can be part of it.
And what is Stockholm Syndrome, real briefly?
So it's really adapting to someone who's captive or taking over a person, controlling their life, sort of adapting to that situation. The famous model of that
Stockholm
would be
Syndrome.
many decades ago, a woman called Patty Hearst, who was kidnapped. But it's taking on the beliefs and taking on an acceptance, if you will, of a kind of a captive situation. And
Yeah.
these situations with women who have been abused who meet the criteria.
Let's see
for
what
battered
Nick
spouse.
thinks of this.
Nick?
You haven't heard his Stockholm Syndrome rant?
Which Nick?
Starro.
No.
Basically, it's BS.
Oh, okay. Well, he would know he's Swedish.
Yeah. And like the reason the people weren't really siding with the people who took them hostage, they were pissed at the people who rescued them because they just went in there guns blazing and almost got all of them killed.
Okay.
So it was just like completely blown out of proportion.
Okay, so the people who nearly got them killed, like, they were mad at them, so everyone thought that therefore they liked the people who had them captive.
Nick tells the story a lot better, but it's been a while
I'm sure
since I
he
heard it.
does,
But-
because he's Swedish.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, I'll ask him next time I see him.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, all right, cool.
Syndrome. They oftentimes adapt, defend, and take on in an acquiescent way that this is okay and I'm part of this situation as opposed to the situation.
Will this syndrome exhibit itself in physical attributes?
It can, at times, even physical illness at times.
Yeah, the origin of it.
Inability to sleep, inability to keep food down, and those type of things.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Would that individual potentially experience hypervigilance?
Well, that's a large part of it. Of any trauma-based disorder is hypervigilance. What changes when you've been traumatized, any kind of trauma, not just abuse, but what changes is your perception of danger. So whether it's the lid of the garbage can hitting on your nose, or whether it's someone being abusive towards you, those situations change your perception of danger. So you no longer see that object or that person in the same way.
David, what does that
have
say
a
about it?
foreboding sense of danger could occur. So other people may not perceive it with that person. He's so nice at work, or he's nice in these other settings, or he's so great on the softball field, but at home he's different. So that person who's being abused, their perception changes.
Does that include denial?
It could include denial, and oftentimes that's part of the explanation. The defensiveness of that person is the denial of how bad things are that are going
I
on.
believe so, yeah. I just said it. I'm tired sometimes.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, sir. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning.
Nice to see you in person.
Good to see you again.
So there's a subjective component to trauma, is what I understand you're saying, correct?
Always. Yes, sir.
And so hypothetically, a couple could be in a 3.5-year relationship with physical violence, emotional violence, even sexual violence, but either or both of those partners may or may not believe that is a traumatic experience for him or herself, correct?
Yes, sir. People mistake the stimulus about what happens as the trauma. But the trauma is really a reaction to it. So bad things that happen, people don't always react in the same way to them. So yes, sir, that's correct.
So for instance, a homicide detective or a homicide prosecutor may go out to a scene and see a freshly dead body, and their perception of that environmental stimulus may be very different from somebody who works at Dunkin' Donuts and just gives us muffins in the morning coming across a dead body. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. That homicide detective may be able
God.
to go eat lunch right after it, and the other person who works at the donut restaurant may not be able to eat for a couple of days as a result. So yes, perception is a big part of how trauma occurs.
Masha!
I understand your answers today, and I'm not saying that they were different the other day, but I understand you to say that it's very important to do a comprehensive evaluation to get the full picture of what is going on in the perceived battered spouse's mind. Correct?
We certainly made up
Yes.
for botching every other aspect of this trial before today.
Well, he was not the most popular yesterday, I tell you what.
No.
Even
he scored
amongst the
some good
most,
points.
the biggest Boone haters, they were fully mad at Mr. J yesterday.
And yeah, even today, like publicly Buzz Steve, who's not a fan of Boone, was like going off on the prosecutor.
Oh, people have been, because as far as people who really, really hate Boone are concerned, the state's doing a pretty bad job, because it should be slam dunk.
It should be.
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Muffins was good. Which one's
Yeah.
Dr. Muffins? Dr.
Amber.
Muffins as in back from Ember. Her. We're
Yeah.
still talking about her. I can't stand that woman.
Muffins or Amber Heard?
Not Muffins. I cannot stand that Muffins
really?
woman. Yes.
Yeah, you're a Spiegel girl, I bet.
I found her to be infuriating. Just stop with your blurring on about your DSM bloody 5.
So, we've been talking about the importance of doing a comprehensive evaluation with as many collateral sources as one could possibly have when making an assessment about the battered spouse syndrome, correct?
Yes, sir. It's a relevant piece of information. Yes, sir.
And would you agree that obviously the person who is accused of committing a crime, there are credibility issues that you do need to care for when relying upon that person's history provided about the events leading to that and the past events describing the relationship with the intimate partner?
Yes, sir. In every forensic evaluation, that's the case.
Is this particularly important if there's a comorbidity with an alcohol abuse disorder?
Yes.
And can you tell the jury what alcohol abuse disorder means in the DSM-5-TR?
Sure. It's the biggest part of it is it's not just the use of alcohol, it's impairment that happens as a result. So it's the excessive use of alcohol, but that could mean something different, just like the excessive use of marijuana
really?
might mean. But it's the use of alcohol to the degree that it impairs or infects a person's life. And with that may come a lot of other things like deceitfulness or aggression or unreliability, sleep or somatic problems, difficulties. So, but the important thing to remember there is that it's the use of a substance that impairs or affects a person's life.
And if there is alcohol involved in the histories being given about either the event in question or any preceding events, must the evaluator take that into account when evaluating the memories and perceptions of the person giving them that history?
Yes, so in introducing that new topic about memory, we know that substances can interfere and impair memory. So as a result of that, you want to know what they were using, how close it was. If you're talking about a particular event, like a crime, you want to know if there was substance usage, and if so, what the person's memory functioning was, and does that match up with other sources of information about what those events were.
Are you familiar with the narcissistic personality disorder?
Yes, sir, of course.
Oh.
That's recognized in the DSM-5-TR?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell us whether or not a person who is giving a history, whether it's the patient/client or whatnot, has traits, perhaps not a diagnosis, but even just traits of the narcissistic personality disorder? Is that something the evaluator should account for in evaluating the credibility of the history given?
Yes.
And why is that?
Well, because all forms of disorders or conditions or just traits may lead to inaccurate information, either not purposely or purposely. They may be deceptive. So certain personality disorders or traits can lead to deception or inappropriate or inaccurate information. That's why you need more than one source of information. Does what this person is saying to me check out with other sources of information?
And I don't mean to quiz you on it, but can you tell us some of the criteria for the narcissistic personality
No,
disorder?
please.
Yes, sir. So it is a grandiose sense of self-worth. It's the consideration of yourself over anybody else. It's kind of operating your own world. So it's an inflated
Thank
sense
you,
of who you are.
Chloe.
It's a misperception of how important you are to other people and your meaning to other people. It's a sense of specialness that you stand out from other people in terms of special skill or skills, and that other people, if they don't recognize that, they should recognize that. So the biggest heading there is an inflated sense of self-esteem and grandiosity.
Are you familiar with an adjustment disorder diagnosis?
Yes, sir.
And is that in the DSM-5-TR?
Yes, sir. Correct.
Can you tell us about that?
Adjustment disorder is a person's reaction, and it could be emotional, it can be behavioral, or it can be both, to a situation that occurs. You broke up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, so you're upset about that. And so as a result, you're tearful, you're anxious or nervous.
I love this. Chat, you are my people. You are my people. Stay. Oh my god. Did someone do something in their own interest? Narcissist. Narcissist. Oh my god. You know what got me yesterday? Okay, was it yesterday? The day she testified, right? It's like, of course. Okay, this happened a lot. I saw a lot of tweets that were like, of course she had to have her time on the stand. Narcissist. It's like, she has her right to testify in her defense, for fuck's sake. Testifying does not make you a narcissist. She might be. I don't know if she's a narcissist or not. I don't know. But testifying does not make you a narcissist. Hello. Once you decide to testify in your own defense, does that suddenly make you a narcissist?
Yes.
Holy hell. What does this world come to?
Worried about what may happen to you as a result of breaking up with them, or you behaviorally may not start not going to work, or get into more arguments or fights with your children as a result. So it's a temporary reaction to a stressful situation that occurs in some individuals.
And hypothetically, if a person who is giving a history for criteria of diagnosis, let me strike that. If somebody is giving a history and that is being used to come to an evaluation conclusion of battered spouse syndrome, if that person has been diagnosed with adjustment disorder predating the traumatic relationship, is that something that you take into account?
You'd want to know any prior diagnosis because it may not necessarily be exclusionary, but it could. So adjustment disorder is a temporary reaction. You're upset, a temporary period. Most of them just go away on their own. Whereas something else like a traumatic stress disorder is long-term. It's something that person's stuck with for a period of time that usually doesn't just go away on its own. So yes, you'd want to know that for that term I used before, that differential diagnosis. You'd want to know those things to compare and contrast them and hold them up against each other.
Now, hypothetically, if somebody says things like, I'm the best
shut up,
that's ever happened to you, and I'm the best you'll ever do, are those indications of the narcissistic personality disorder?
Well, it could be. You wouldn't want just that alone. You'd want to see if that was happening in other settings. Is it happening on the job, with friends, with family members? Is it showing up on psychological testing? But certainly that would be a red flag. You go, I want to pay more attention to that. I want to investigate that further.
And is it important when evaluating trauma-based disorders, because they're based on emotional reactions, to do that rule out on alcohol or drug use?
Certainly you'd want to do that. It's not usually disguised as a trauma-based disorder. Alcohol and trauma aren't usually rule-outs for each other, but it could exacerbate a condition. It could make you diagnose a trauma condition when it's just an adjustment disorder. I say just, I mean minimize it, but it's not as serious as a trauma-based disorder.
Is it important to consider whether the abuser and or the abused behave differently in the absence of alcohol or drugs?
Yes.
And why is that?
Well, because you're trying to analyze a psychological condition. If as a result of drug or alcohol abuse, their behavior changes or their perceptions change, that's not a psychological condition, that's a substance abuse disorder. So that's why you'd want to know that. So if their condition remains the same, maybe it's a little worse when they're using drugs or alcohol, but it's the same perception of threat or danger, then you're going to diagnose a trauma-based disorder. If not, then you're going to diagnose a substance abuse disorder. You can have both, but you'd want to rule one out as opposed to the other.
And are you familiar with the classic three-step cycle of battered spouse syndrome or domestic violence?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain that?
Of course he is.
So
He's
there's
an
a cycle of
expert.
violence that was first developed by a woman in the 70s called Lenore Walker, Dr. Lenore Walker. She's a psychologist who's usually credited with developing the whole theory of battered spouse syndrome. And in the classic model, which we know oftentimes happens, not every time, but in the classic model, there's a period of tension and build-up where things are happening, little arguments are happening, there's bickering back and forth, there may be some threats or some loud voices back and forth, but it's all things that are leading up to a possible violent episode. Then there's the episode that happens itself, the violent episode. It could be verbal, sexual, physical, but there's the violent incident that occurs. And then after that violent episode occurs, there's a honeymoon phase where the person who's done the abuse, they're apologizing, taking that person who's abused out to dinner, buying them things, saying nice things to them, complimenting them to sort of make up for the abuse. And it's kind of it's called the cycle of violence. And the reason why is it tends to repeat itself in a lot of these situations of battered spouse syndrome where you see this repeating itself over and over and over again. So people are kind of stuck in these revolving doors in their relationship.
And can one cycle be enough to traumatize a person?
Yes.
Does this trauma necessarily have to be coming from a man to a woman?
No.
And in fact, as times have changed, language has changed, and so when we keep referring to it as battered woman syndrome in the courtroom today, what we're actually talking about now is battered spouse syndrome or even intimate partner violence.
Yes, I mean, interpartner violence can happen outside legal settings, but it's really a kind of the large over-grouping, if you will, to be able to talk about all these other things that can happen as a result, like trauma-based disorders and battered spouse syndrome. And you're right, the later research has kind of pulled us away from thinking this only happens to women in heterosexual relationships. We know now there's all sorts of derivations, and that men can suffer also from battered spouse syndrome, battered person syndrome, homosexual couples, so we know it goes around to everybody, but still, women are more often diagnosed with battered spouse syndrome than anybody else.
Does the trauma have to come in the form of physical violence?
No, sir.
Does it have to come in the form of sexual violence?
No, sir.
Can it come in the form of emotional or mental violence?
Yes, sir.
And would examples of that include such as running the partner down and telling them that they're no good and just general insulting and lowering their value?
It could. Remember, that's a stimulus, so it would depend on how the person who's receiving that responds to it as to whether or not it becomes traumatic. But yes, sir, that'd be the first red flag you'd want to investigate.
And you mentioned isolation before. So if somebody in a hypothetical intimate partner setting is trying to isolate the partner from his or her family members or friends or coworkers, can that be, and I'm not saying necessarily, can that be indications of intimate partner violence that could lead to battered spouse syndrome?
So sure, that'd be an example of coercive control. So if a person was doing that, that's consistent with that classification of battered person syndrome. Yes.
And hypothetically, controlling another person, the intimate partner's personal property or effects, such as a birth certificate or identification papers, can that be indication of emotional trauma towards the partner who is lacking the control over those identification papers?
So that's a stimulus that could result, and the other person subjectively perceives it, in some trauma. So yes, all of the things that you mentioned could be stimulus, if you will, that a person could perceive as traumatic.
And hypothetically, if one partner A gives partner B a gift, such as a bicycle, but partner A continues to maintain that the bicycle is his or hers because he or she bought it, even though it was a gift of B, can that be a form of emotional abuse towards B?
Sure, it sounds like control, but I guess you could interpret it as emotional abuse too, but it sounds more like a control mechanism.
It's
that'd be consistent.
mine. But you bought it
I'm not
for
suggesting
me.
it's legally or morally okay. But when one intimate partner does these hypothetical emotional things, non-physical violent things to partner B, if partner B has poor personal skills and coping skills and maybe consuming alcohol, is it unreasonable or unfathomable to hear that partner B responded with physical violence to partner?
Objection, assuming facts not in evidence.
What about battered manlet syndrome?
Yes.
Yeah, why would she take Sarah George's bike? It's probably far too small for her. Or maybe his trike. Well, he did have a baby
So it would
chair.
increase the probability of physical violence.
Hang on.
After hearing argument of counsel, the objection is overruled.
So me respond to that?
If you remember the question, please go ahead.
So it would increase the probability of physical violence. So if those things in fact were perceived as threatening or abusive in any way or insulting to the person who they were directed towards, it would increase the probability of physical violence.
And then again, the perceptions are all in the eye of the beholder, whether emotional things that are said to one another or physical things are done to one another, whether the recipient of that behavior views it as trauma is a subjective decision by that person. Right?
Yes, the perception is the impact. So that's how you would know that. It's just, water off a duck's back, or is it something that's kind of sticks with me and I think about it all the time?
Now, you mentioned earlier anxiety, low self-esteem, and depression can all be components of battered spouse syndrome, correct?
Right.
Is it important as the evaluator to rule out whether or not these conditions predated the violent or abusive relationship?
Yes.
And why is that?
Well, because where things start is important diagnostically. So if all of those things were in place, all of the symptoms that were just mentioned are in place, then you wouldn't attribute those to the abuse. You'd say those things were pre-existing. Now, abuse could make it worse, but in terms of your diagnosis, you'd need to know where things started. So if those symptoms didn't start at the time where there was abuse that was alleged to have occurred, then it's unlikely that it's attributed to that abuse.
And independent of any narcissistic personality disorder traits, would you agree that anybody in a certain legal setting has a motivation to present themselves in a certain way?
Yes, to do impression management, either depending on the outcome. So if there's punitive sanctions, they may lie to make themselves look worse, or as a result, if they're in other settings, like divorce settings, they may lie to make themselves look better. So there's always some impression management you have to kind of look through in your evaluation.
And that's important for an evaluator?
It should be looked at in every evaluation.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Can you redirect examination?
Just want to, one more time, in response to the state's questioning, you indicated that where an individual's credibility may be in question, there is a necessity that the individual who's making the assessment corroborate whatever they're being told. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, in a number of different ways. We have psychological tests that assess for things called malingering or faking mental health problems or difficulties. So you want to do that. You want to look at other evidence to see if it's all consistent. So it's very important you don't just rely on self-report.
It's possible that an individual may exhibit one or two attributes of a particular DSM diagnosis, but not actually qualify because it's simply not there.
Right, sure. So sometimes like social isolation can be because we're introverted, or it could be part of depression. So you need to kind of follow it out and see how many of the symptoms are there to see whether or not it meets the criteria.
So I may exhibit one or two symptoms of narcissism, but not qualify because I don't meet all of those, or a significant number of the indicators that you would rely upon to make that diagnosis.
Yes, or it can be situationally based, like we may display narcissistic features here in a courtroom, but may not do that in any other part of our life.
Now, in your experience, have you determined, learned, either through your studies, experience, and so on, whether or not the abusive behavior may begin based upon an individual's perception of things occurring to him as a child, or her as a child? In other words, if they grow up in an abusive household,
Okay, I understand.
Sustained.
you've indicated that there are things that, I think in response to the state's cross-examination, that there are things that may add to or may contribute to a particular psychosis or symptom. Would an individual's background as a child include those type of criteria?
Yes, sir. You're more vulnerable to certain psychological conditions based on your history. So if you've been traumatized before, or bad situations have happened to you before, if you've suffered from depression before, it makes you more vulnerable to those conditions or other conditions later on.
Finally, one question or one symptom that we haven't discussed, I don't think, or maybe it was discussed by the state, was learned helplessness. What is that?
Learned helplessness, I've really spoken about it a little bit, but now we have the fancy term for it. Learned helplessness was really researched by someone named Seligson, a doctor named Seligson, a psychologist, research psychologist. And just real briefly, what it is, it's when someone kind of gives up and feels like there's nothing that they can do to change their situation. It was originally done with laboratory animals, but where a person really feels that no matter what strategy they've taken, like leave, stay, fight, whatever it might be, it won't work. It usually leads to depression or developments of other strategies, like I have to appease or please or make sure I do everything correctly or apologize. So it's really believing that no matter what you do, it won't be effective.
Doctor, thank you for your testimony. Thank you for traveling up here from Miami so early in the morning.
No problem at all.
And to rest.
Thank you, sir. You can be excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Can the parties approach for a moment?
Okay. He was lovely. Don't know how much he helped, but he was good. Yeah, Sarah not looking too happy about that. At least she hasn't got this crappy eyeliner on
It
today.
is 10:40 at this time. We're going to go ahead and take that mid-morning break.
Okay.
Similar instruction I've given you over the last couple of days. I'm sure
No,
you're
she
tired of
does
hearing it, but I got to
actually.
keep telling you. Please don't have any conversations among yourselves or anyone else about the person.
Please don't talk to anyone ever. What is this thing, everybody? Guys, what is that thing hanging in front of the seal? This yellow thing on a stick. Help me out. I don't know what that is. Hey, J-Rock. Go away, you. Oh, did you see him do kissy fish lips? Look, kissy fish lips. Jesse Manlet Weber. He's a bit of a manlet himself. A mic, you think? I don't think it's a light. It's too little for a light. It looks like some sort of, I don't know, lolly, like a candy on a
Mic?
stick.
Microphone?
I don't think it's a mic.
Boom arm?
A sticky fly trap? A tassel? I don't know. If it's a mic, it's the weirdest looking mic I've ever seen. Either a boom mic or it could be an alarm. Yeah, Brad, it could be an alarm. Very strange. I've not seen anything like that before. Maybe we should like Google image it or something. Candy jelly berries, a snack to tease Boone with.
603 State of Florida versus Sarah Boone. State.
Shelby sighting.
Defense.
Thanks so much for saying.
County Henderson for Sarah.
Ms. Boone is still seated at counsel's table? Yes, Mr. Relevance.
Judge, we had several late witnesses that were scheduled for this.
Oh, it could be a pull down. That's more like it.
We've excused Detective Scott Lowen based on the testimony of Detective Cossel. We've excused Abraham Moreno, who's going to be recalled based on the testimony of Detective Cossel. You've heard from the two deputies, you've heard from Dr. Brandon.
Well, there's been a lot of shade thrown around, Chloe.
It's outside. She was a witness as a neighbor in that complex, and she would testify about observing physical injuries to Sarah Boone.
Can't hear him. Yeah, I know, he was talking to the damn mic.
In our opinions collectively, Tony Anderson and myself, that it's not necessary to call Ms. Gallup.
Hang on, let me see if I can do something about it.
There was disagreement about that, but I believe that Ms. Boone is now in agreement that we're not going to call Ms. Gallup holding. So that leaves now calling the Orange County Sheriff's Department phone extraction expert.
Ms. Wadden.
Yes, back to the stand. We've got two short videos. These are the short videos relating to George Torres with the bat and then striking the TV. They're less than a minute apiece. The problem with that is because we've excused so many witnesses. That's our last witness, so we're going to be done here in probably 11:15. And then...
But Ms. Walker is supposed to be here at 1 o'clock?
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
And then I haven't had a chance to meet with Dr. Harper.
Don't use that finger.
Whoa! This afternoon.
What? Wait.
Okay, all right.
Did you see that? We excused so many witnesses that's our last witness, so we're going to be done here in probably 11:15. And then,
But Miss Walker is supposed to be here at 1 o'clock?
that's correct.
Okay, all right.
Look,
And then-
look, 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 what, wait, hey!
Oh!
Hey! Oh, Owens!
Oh, so that's what you
Sly!
think of the judge.
Yes. Hang on, screenshotting that one. Oh, oopsie. Nice, Owens.
You ain't gonna give me more time, are you, Judge?
Fuck the gallery. Owens' face.
Oh, he's wanted to flip off the judge for a month.
Sir, I beg your pardon, sir. No, that is his.
That
That
looks
is
like his finger.
absolutely his finger.
Yeah, no, that's his finger.
Question.
Okay, sir, that's
He waved it around for a bit. That's why I was like, no way. I have to go back and watch that. Whoa. Look, he keeps going.
And we anticipate Dr. Harper this afternoon. And then we may be really close to ending the defense's case.
Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know that.
We're gonna have a- yeah.
Okay, so, well, yeah, that may, well, if you're saying that your presentation with Ms. Wadden is 15 minutes, I don't know what the cross is going to be, it may be de minimis, or you may be saving her for rebuttal, I don't know. Mr. J or Mr. Cacciatore? As it relates to Ms. Wadden, CSI Tech, you're not calling her in rebuttal?
During her trial
I got it, guys. Don't worry, I got it.
Okay, awesome. So what we can do is we can proceed with Ms. Wadden, and we can just take an early lunch and ask them to be back here maybe 12:50. So that way, if we have any issues, we can address them before we start at 1 o'clock. Ms. Boone, you were sworn this morning. I just got a couple of things to go over with you. There was a list of witnesses that was provided to the court last night and again this morning as potential witnesses that may be called in your defense. One of those
Sure.
witnesses was Maria Gallipoli. Your lawyers have advised that they may not be calling that person as a
do
witness
not
in this case.
approach.
Do you understand that? And again, similar to other conversations
Hey,
we've
where's the
had,
sign?
I don't want to go into any specifics of any conversations that you've had with any of your lawyers, just whether or not you've had them.
It's
Have you
very
had
loud
conversations with your lawyers about calling Miss Gallipoli as a witness?
Yes.
Have you had conversations with your attorneys about why they are deciding not to call her as a witness?
Yes.
And similar to what we discussed yesterday, do you understand that your attorneys make the trial
his arm
strategy
in the
decisions,
background.
including what witnesses to call or not to call?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you still satisfied with their representation of you in
I
this
feel
matter?
like we need to.
Are you still on board with the strategy that has been employed in your defense?
Yes.
Are you in agreement with the strategy not to call Ms. Gallipoli as a witness in this case?
I am.
Okay, all right, thank you very much, ma'am. Then let's go ahead and bring our jury back in, and we can call Ms. Uwad and go from there. All right,
Can you excuse Ms. Gallipoli?
all right, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and stand and bring back in our panel.
Mr. Owens, how do you spell out George?
What I have, she,
That was brilliant.
a break by raising your hands. Record reflect. Good morning, ma'am. Could you state and spell your name for the record for us?
First name is Janella, Junella. Last name Wadden, UAD as in Delta, AN.
Counselor, you may inquire.
So, again, your official title,
Digital forensics examiner.
and are you referred to as a detective, or what is your?
Just an examiner.
Ma'am, Judge, can I approach the witness?
Yes, of course.
Ma'am, I'm going to show you what's been marked as identification defense exhibit AA. And do you recognize that video, or that CD of the video?
Yes.
Well, I think we kind of prepped you on it ahead of time. That was extracted from the Sarah Boone phone that you were asked to extract.
Yes, one of the media files, yes.
Okay, and is that video a fair and accurate depiction of one of the videos that was extracted from Sarah Boone phone?
Yes.
And then identification Z, defense identification, same type of question. You've had a chance to review that video. Is that one of the videos that was extracted from the Sarah Boone phone?
Yes.
Judge, this time I'd like to have these introduced in evidence.
What's
you.
happening? What's
All right, what
happening,
was pre-marked
chat?
as AA will be received into evidence without objection as defendant 17. What was pre-marked as Z will be received into evidence without objection as defendants 18.
We're going to judge replay exhibit
I
17
might
first.
do what
You may proceed.
I might do what he did in a
Is
minute.
there a volume? Judge, do you have control of the volume?
Volume is on.
Oh, this is
You're gonna help me take
video.
this shit out.
That could be the hand coming out
Real
of the
shit.
suitcase.
You're gonna help me take it out. You're gonna help me take this shit out.
He's a manly.
Manlet!
Take your swing. TV's like, you come within 3 feet of me, I'm gonna kill you.
Judge, I'm asking to publish Exhibit 18.
You may proceed.
I doubt it.
Well, that didn't work. Transparent overlay.
Hurt. Take. Oh, not that many swings, sir. Is he out of breath already? Oh my god.
Oh my god!
He's out of breath.
Well, he's very small.
I know.
You spoke about
Eh,
your
that'll buff out.
Say again, sir.
You spoke about your They're tendering no problem.
All right, thank you very much. This witness can't be released, correct?
Yes.
State.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
What?
All right, can the parties approach momentarily, please?
Supposedly he was jealous of Brian Boone, and he came over to fix the TV. And then he
That's because.
At this
Well,
point in time,
okay,
it's
wait.
a little bit early.
So hang on. So that was because Brian came over to fix the TV.
That's what
Because
Sarah said.
remember, she said yesterday that it was he couldn't connect the Fire Stick or something to it.
Yeah.
So she called Brian to come and fix the TV because he has to do kind of man stuff.
The manlet duties for George.
Manlet duties, in the bedroom, but
Yeah.
the real man stuff like connecting, TVs and
Yeah.
technical stuff, that is for Brian. So Brian came over and fixed the TV.
Oh, yeah.
And then
He
Manlet got
accused
very
her
upset.
of sucking his thing.
Yeah, well, she probably has at some point in time, but I
That's what
don't
somebody
know.
said.
That was David.
David, okay, yeah. Somebody said
Yeah.
that. And to be
Yeah, it
fair,
was-
somebody has.
Well, yeah,
She probably has
absolutely.
at some point.
I'm sure she has, but not then. But yeah, like how about that? Wow, he got really mad. That is a mad manlet.
Yeah.
That is one mad manlet.
I don't
Like,
know.
come on.
It was just weird.
Why? But why was that videoed? Is what I'd like
So
to know.
she said he told her to video it.
Really?
And it could
Okay.
be like, I mean, my dad's broken a printer before that was broken already.
Yeah.
And he like threw it on the ground. And apparently I don't recommend it because we both learned that the glass in the printer kind of goes everywhere. But
Yeah.
sometimes like something's broken, you're just like, I'm going to really break it now. And
Yeah. I gotta break it good.
do you want to play it again, guys?
Play it again.
Yeah,
All right.
real quick. Sorry.
All right. When was it?
The World Series is on Friday, so.
We can play it again. When was it?
My husband.
There we go. Oh, wait, here we are. Hang on, get back a bit.
Swing. Oh yeah. How's your wife and my kids, bastard?
Wow.
You spoke about it on the
Say again, sir.
You spoke about it on the
Yes, understood.
They're tendering
Okay.
no problem.
These
Thank you
people
very much.
are actual idiots.
This witness can't be released, correct?
Just like all I said.
State. Thank you.
And like I have said many
Corporal.
times before,
Oh.
online is always right. Sorry?
No, there was like the videos were like broken up into three parts. But you probably thought that was the longer one. Beautiful.
Right, we're moving forward.
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah.
My wayward son.
If you want to go and get the other one and put it into the thingy, we can watch it in between breaks.
I don't know what
If you want to go and get
Oh.
it for later, yeah.
that one. My favorite one.
Yeah, go for your life.
Take your swing.
Take your swing.
fun in Abilene.
Or they beat it with a bat so Brian will get them a brand new one. Now that's...
I could see them doing that. That is so true.
Yeah.
They conspired together to just get a new freaking TV because this
From
one
Brian.
sucked. It was only 27 inches.
I thank you all very much. Mr. Relevance, if you could see to calling Dr. Harper at this time to advise her to be here at 1:30 for her testimony.
Yes, sir.
Just 1 second, sir. Wait for Mr. Relevance to return.
What you got there?
The video.
Alright, you can play it.
So, this.
Oh, that.
Was that what you wanted or something else?
Me?
Yeah. What were you thinking?
I thought you were talking to Chad about that.
I was.
Isn't this those dudes from Texas?
Yeah.
Alright, quick.
Okay. With the baseball bat.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're going to jail. No, I'm not. Yes, you are.
Dumpster Bros, yeah. Sean showed me this
Hold him up,
Yeah.
fucker.
on stream once.
I'm right fucking here. You are in.
So I had no idea who they were.
Come get it. Go get the gun. Back off. Go get my BB gun. I'm gonna put 9 in this motherfucker. Back off. I'm standing at the dumpster, bitch. If you come closer to me, I'm gonna kill you. Hey, you hear him say he's gonna kill me?
Yes.
I'm at the dumpster. Put the gun up and go inside.
You pulled a gun in front
You
of our
put a
children.
gun in front of my kids. Went for a fucking mattress. Fuck you. Point at me, motherfucker. Point at me. Take your swing. I'm standing my ground, motherfucker. Take your swing.
Take your swing.
You're in an alley. You're not
You're
in your home, sir.
You came out to the alley to support the gun. I will kill you're dead. I promise you, you're both dead. Bitch.
It is an alley.
You are in an alley.
Are they going to
Fucking
use the
shotgun,
bats? I
you
can't
piece of
remember.
shit. I'm gonna
Throw
kill
a
you.
bat.
I doubt it. Bet.
I doubt it.
Video the cops, you might want to stop yelling.
Oh no! I don't give a fuck! I will fucking kill you! You pulled a gun from my kid! You pull
Not
that gun
funny,
one more
but it
time,
is.
before I'll take it out, put a bullet through your head. No, you won't. Bet. Point it at me. Take a swing. Point it at me. Go ahead. Point it at me. Take your swing. Point that motherfucker at me. Go ahead. Take your swing. Point it at me.
God. Americans.
Back off. Point it at me again. Back off. Point it at me
Oh
again.
dear. The specimens of manhood.
You're a dead man. I doubt it. No.
This is peak masculinity in America.
Oh, yeah.
You're a bitch. I will kill you too.
You're a bitch. I'm
Fuck
gonna
you,
kill you
little
too.
faggot. Be honest with what my kids doing, bitch.
No, I'm sure it's not all Americans, Cowpoke.
You're dead. I doubt it. I better quit
threatening.
This is like what we would call stereotypical, though. Like what the stereotype we think of Americans. Usually with guns, though.
If you come within 3 foot of me, I'm gonna kill you. Okay.
You're not going to shoot my husband.
Come on. Shoot me. You're dead. Point it.
You wish you were this American. Oh. What? Aaron?
Yeah.
So instead of using a bat, they got a gun out?
They had the guns. The other guy had a bat, and he went to swing at them.
Uh-huh.
And then they returned fire.
Okay,
all
yeah, that's
over
very
a
American.
Dumpster. Mattress in a dumpster.
Uh-huh.
And the father was charged. Or the father and son were both charged. The father was convicted. The son was acquitted, though, for self-defense.
Yeah, of course they were showing off their man boobs. What else?
Yeah.
Why else? Well, that
They
was a
never-
nice little interval.
Yeah, they never televised a trial. And trust me, I'm so angry.
I bet you are. It would have been a dumpster fire.
Yes.
Why do they call dumpster
We're not going to be
bros?
having the
They
charging
live near
conference
one.
regarding the jury instructions at this time.
'Cause it was
That will be conducted
Texas.
tomorrow.
It was
I have
over-
requested the defense is seeking to utilize for the purposes of...
Sorry?
It was over. This guy kept putting a mattress in the dumpster, taking up all the space. And then they would go and pull the mattress out and I believe take it back over to his
Jury instructions?
Yeah.
So then they got into an argument over it and culminated into that
I
idiocy.
see. I see. So he's just talking about jury
The court throughout the trial has been redlining the jury instructions that were provided initially by the state. At the end of the evidence and testimony presentation this afternoon, the court will email those to all parties. Once Mr. Owens comes back in from advising witnesses are going to be here, we will bring in our jury and proceed with the evidence presentation this afternoon.
Okay, so nothing's happening right now.
No, you can probably skip till the next one.
Yeah.
Or our next witness.
Okay. Oh, old lady. Okay, now I gotta say something about this. So this old lady, she's a neighbor, and this is the one that they asked yesterday, like this defense asked yesterday in open court for her to be able to be to testify on Zoom, right? And the state went, yeah, nah. Nah. The court would have been okay with it, but the court said, well, in order for someone to be able to testify on Zoom, I have to have both parties agree, and I don't have an agreement here from the state, right?
Wow.
Yeah, so they made this poor old lady, and you can see how difficult it is for her to get in there. They made her come in, and she only is on the stand for a very short period of time. She's super old and super, like, decrepit. She has a caregiver. Why is the state making her turn up there when she could have just been, like, on her computer? For goodness sake. Rude. Yeah, maybe it would have been brutal, Scott, but...
Well, we have seen that old guy in the Baldwin trial over Zoom.
Still.
The expert who couldn't hear the woman's voice.
Yeah, but I mean, it's making an assumption that that's how it's going to be. She's got a caregiver.
True.
So who's to say that it wouldn't have worked out? No one should have made her show up. Yes and no, old line. I mean, I did see this one prior, and she did add to the credibility of her having bruises. So I kind of disagree a little bit. I usually agree with you 100%. But she needs all of the corroborating witnesses' testimony she can get to say that she did actually have those bruises around that time in 2019.
And also, I think it's probably good. I hate to say this, but she showed that Sarah isn't a racist.
Oh, really? I'll have to... maybe. I don't know. I don't know if there's been much testimony that shows that she was racist, but...
well, some people are saying that online. But it showed that that there were people out in the world that really like Sarah. And it humanized Sarah a little bit. Because a lot of the other people in the apartment complex were like, oh, I don't like drunks. I don't want to be anywhere near them. I just ignore them.
That's true.
So at least there's one person that is like, oh, we like to talk, and
Okay. That's interesting way. That's interesting you put it that way, Dali, because I am so outside of the whole cultural conflicts that go on in the US and especially in different regions as well. So, I mean, I know that some things come up in this testimony that have some racial connotations, and they went completely over my head. So I'm interested to hear, as this goes along, how you guys think that came off to the jury. So let's go ahead.
See, Sarah has a black friend. I mean, basically. I do agree with you there, Marsha.
Can you raise your hand, please? Please, you swear or affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Ma'am, good afternoon. Can you state and spell your name for the record for us?
What did you say?
Can you state and spell your name for the record for us?
Walker. Pearl. Walker, Walker.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Mr. Beck, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, Ms. Walker. Ms. Walker, do you know the defendant, Sarah Boone?
Yes.
How do you know her, ma'am? How do you know Ms. Boone? If you can't hear me, just ask me to repeat myself.
Okay.
How do you know Ms. Boone?
She lived in the same apartment building that I lived in.
And can you tell us how long the two of you shared the same apartment complex, apartment buildings?
About 4 years.
And how is it that you became familiar with Ms. Boone?
My husband and I was sitting out on the porch, and we see her coming with her 2 dogs.
And what happened then?
Then I would call her over with, with her dogs.
And what do you mean by call her over?
When I see her walking with a dog, and I see her and I look at her, and I say, "Hey, Sarah, how you doing?"
Aww.
And that's it.
And would she generally respond to you?
Yes.
And how, look, I'll go there. Would you spend time with Ms. Boone?
Did I spend time?
Would you spend time speaking with Ms. Boone?
Yes.
How long would you speak with her?
About 15 or 20 minutes. That's all.
And was your husband sometimes involved in those conversations as well?
He just say hi.
So you and Ms. Boone were the two primary communicators?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In the time that you knew Ms. Boone, did you witness anything about her person or her body that gave you cause for concern?
Sometimes I would see it like she had been choked around her neck or her arm be hurt. I have a mark on her arm. And I just asked her.
And would she describe how that happened?
She just say, I had a...
Hang on. The objection is sustained.
When you would ask her that, how did she appear to you to respond emotionally to your question about her injuries?
She just say, one of them days or something.
Objection sustained.
Just for the record, instead of telling us what she would say, would she demonstrate any emotion on her face?
Well, I would see the emotion that she was upset about something.
And did you ask about her obvious upset persona? Her upset, the fact that she was upset? Would you ask her about that?
Yeah. Well,
Okay, you have to just limit your answer to the question. Would you ask her about that issue? About why she was upset?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, I just can't go beyond that. Thank you. Now, how frequently would that occur?
I would say on the weekends when I see her.
Was that primarily when you saw her on the weekends?
Mostly I would see her walking through, going to her place, and I'm sitting on the porch and I see her then.
Now, strike that. While you were there in that apartment complex, and excuse me for getting ahead of myself, do you still live in that apartment complex?
No.
How long have you been gone from that apartment complex? If you don't know, that's fine.
It's been a while.
Thank you, ma'am. During the occasions that you had to interact with Ms. Boone, how did she treat you?
Objection.
She was a nice lady.
Overruled.
Nice to me.
Did she ever act uppity?
Objection. Relevance.
Let's not use that word, sir.
Did she ever treat you in an uppity manner?
What you mean, sir?
Did she ever look down on you as a person?
Oh, no.
Did she ever treat you with disrespect?
No.
I'm going to object. This is Harper.
Sustained.
Well, how short is she?
She never used any racial slurs in my presence.
Okay, well, okay, right. So you guys need to explain this whole uppity thing. I don't understand.
Uppity
Like-
is a term that I think racists use often towards black people who they feel are causing issues like trying to get their equality and freedom. And it's to me, in my opinion, is a racial word. It has racial connotations.
Is it?
Maybe
So,
that's
like-
just...
Okay, so the way I would think uppity means is like entitled or which
causing
people call
issues.
Sarah.
Yeah.
Oh, so hang on, but it's not about Sarah, right? It's whether or not Sarah called her, the neighbor, uppity.
No.
No, that's what he asked, right? He asked if she ever called you uppity.
It has a lot of connotations, but I have seen it used in a racial way.
Lots of people are saying it is racist. So hang on, can we Google it? Because, hang on, we'll keep going and I'll Google it because apparently there's like stuff on this.
And he asked if Sarah was acting uppity, but...
He asked if Sarah was acting
Yes.
uppity. Oh, I thought it was the other way around.
No,
Oops,
but it's
okay.
still, it has a racial overtone.
Okay, Cowpoke says uppity has an archaic definition of being used by people
Yes.
calling the help uppity.
Okay, well...
All right. Let's get all uppity, okay? Ozzy. I'm not allowed to be. I'm from a penal colony, apparently.
It can be both racial and non-racial. Yes, it absolutely has non-racial
Of
uses,
course.
but it also has racial uses, and in this connotation,
Yeah.
it just.
I get that. Like, I think in this instance that it's being utilized in a racial way. That's what.
Yeah.
I think. That's what people are up in arms about. That it's being used in a racial way,
No,
and I don't. As an Aussie, I don't get the racial connotation at all. Like,
Yeah,
not even a little bit. So that's why I'm like, chat, help me out. I'm like,
Maybe.
I don't get it. Because I know what the literal definition is. I know the non-racial definition of it. I just have never heard of it in any other way at all. The help is too uppity is the archaic use. Okay. Yeah. All right. But then again, I don't get why she'd call Sarah that. Why is he asking whether she called Sarah that?
It can mean a lot of different things, and it is outdated. That is true.
Strange word choice by Beck, but it's a strange word choice unless Sarah told him that. But why was
I don't know why.
But it's in defense, so makes no sense at all. Yeah. Florida is in the South, even if it doesn't seem like it. Yeah, it's South. It's not a great word to use. Yeah. No. All right, let's keep going. I might look up this thing that people were saying exists.
Look, I'm not offended by it or anything. It's just what other people might think of it.
Why would you be offended? You're quite white.
Well, trust me, that's...
Oh, people do get offended, though,
yeah,
right? Even if
the
they are
vast
white.
majority of people who get offended on racial issues are white.
Okay. See, again, I could come to America and, like, totally, people would just be offended by my existence. Although they already are. Everyone just gets so offended.
It's a defense's check please moment.
It's a check please moment. Check please.
Yeah, it just...
Sarah's acting all uppity right now.
Yeah, it's just
Look at her, she's so uppity.
I can't check it off. No.
I'm sorry, I'm back, Mrs. Walker. In the time that you and Ms. Boone lived together, on occasion, did you see law enforcement arrive at the apartment complex?
A couple of times.
And did you ever get involved in any of their investigation?
Okay.
Were you ever approached by law enforcement and asked for information, evidence, insight into what might be going on?
No, sir.
Now, in all candor, were there occasions when you believed that Sarah Boone may have been under the influence of alcohol?
Does the Pope shit in the woods?
No, I can't say.
Did you also observe George Torres during the time that you lived there in the apartment complex?
I didn't see him very much. If we're sitting on the porch, that's the only time I see him.
Did you know Mr. Torres very well?
No.
Was there an incident when you saw Ms. Boone with a black eye?
Yes.
Did you witness a pattern between Ms. Boone and Mr. Torres wherein you observed signs of abuse? Objection.
Sustained.
You testified that you saw Ms. Boone on occasion with bruises, other injuries, and a black eye. Is that correct? Is that accurate?
Yes.
And was there any pattern to what you observed in regards to those injuries and bruises that you observed on Ms. Boone?
One time I seen with a black eye and like she had been choked one time.
Okay. Did Ms. Boone complain to you about those marks?
Yes.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Any cross-examination?
Hi, Ms. Walker. Is it fair to say you're not sure when exactly you saw any of those injuries on her, correct?
Say that again?
You're not exactly sure when you saw any of those injuries on her, correct?
Once you come past the apartment, I'll be sitting out there, because we always sit out there.
Right, but we don't know if this is December or 2018 or anything
I
like that.
can't remember, sir.
Okay. And is it fair to say you have no idea how she got those marks? Is that fair?
Repeat that again.
Do you have any idea how she got those marks?
On the weekends, I see him and her go in.
Okay. But you don't know who, if anybody, put those marks on her, right?
Well, I
Just tell us yes or
can
no.
tell when they must have had an argument or something. I hear the dogs barking.
Okay. And you're 5 doors down, right? Unit 8, Unit 3?
Yeah.
No other questions?
Any redirect examination?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Can this witness be released?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much,
She
ma'am.
is the black lady in my
Ms. Walker, the deputy.
She what?
the African American woman in My Cousin Vinny, who is impeached and pulls out like this huge 50 yards tape measure and is like, "How many fingers am I holding up?" And she's, I think I need thicker glasses now.
Look, I believe her, and she can't she can't give like hearsay. And sure, she's 5 doors down, whatever. But this is like 5 years ago now. She wasn't as old as she is now.
No.
She's not stupid.
No, her hearing was a lot better then. Or
Yeah, and she spoke to Sarah. She knew Sarah as a neighbor. She saw Sarah had these things on her body. She heard the dogs barking. She knew that they fought. She can't say what Sarah said, but she can put 2 and 2 together.
She didn't, write down the dates and the times, but
Yeah.
she saw Sarah and George go into the building Friday night looking fine.
Yeah.
Saturday
I think
morning,
she's credible.
Sarah comes.
Yeah.
I thought she was sweet and really humanized Sarah, and just it was a good.
She does. I agree. I agree. I think it's worth having her there, and it's unfortunate that they made her testify on Zoom. Although not testify on Zoom, although having her there is nice. Having her there is nice.
Seeing her in front of the jury there,
Yeah.
I think it was probably better for the defense.
Maybe. Although I do feel sorry for her because it's obviously difficult for her to get around.
They're going to come get you and take you out, okay?
You all done?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yeah, give her a Pop-Tart.
Oh, Sarah. Oh.
Yes, bye. Nice to see you, lovely old lady. That's true. Zoom probably would have been a mess. You're right. Oh, amen. She did get out of town today. That's right. She doesn't get to get out much.
Calling next witness.
Only covertly racist.
Only covertly.
She never used a racial slur to my face.
She looks lovely in her Sunday coat, by the way. She's one of these old ladies who's very well groomed and takes a lot of care with her appearance. I love that. I love old ladies who are very prim and proper. I want to be that. I want to be that old lady.
Me too.
Right, let's keep going. Let's move it along. Chat. Let's move it. I don't mind the student back here. He's cute.
Keep going.
It's the caramel skin. He's nice. Bit young though.
It's all right.
You like him?
All right, members of the jury, witness is running a couple minutes late. I think they may be stuck in the security line downstairs. So we're just going to be in a short recess for them to join us this afternoon.
Yeah, you got to scroll forward to another like 10 minutes.
Scroll.
Scrolling on the railroad. I just saw Owens too.
You just saw him? Oh, you just noticed him?
Yeah.
I did that one for free.
It was worth it.
I had to do that one for free. That was awesome. I had to have Owens in there with a finger. That was too good.
Have the camera, whether it be phone or
Okay, all right. Members of the gallery, good afternoon. And the TV crews as well. The information that's contained on both parties' laptops, be it the defense or the state, is protected by work product and attorney-client privilege. It's not something that's viewable, not something that should be disseminated, and not something that can be looked at unless there is a knowing, intelligent waiver, and that's going to be put out to the public for consumption. So I'm going to ask you, as best as possible, not to view, take pictures of, or look at any of the laptops, be it the defense's laptops or the state's laptops, to avoid that. And with regard to the camera, if we can, when zooming in on either the defense counsel's table or the state's counsel's table, if we can try to avoid their laptops, I would greatly appreciate you, sir.
And
And the podium. Thank you.
All right, let's keep going.
You should change the suitcase hand to Owen's middle finger.
So much seal. So much seal.
State appearances for the record.
Steve Strong, on behalf of the state.
Defense.
James Owens on behalf of Ms.
Kelly Anderson for Ms. Boone.
Kevin Becker, behalf of Sarah.
All right, Ms. Boone is standing at counsel's table wearing a dark gray suit and maroon blouse. Let's go ahead and bring in our jury as Dr. Harper is here.
Nice. Might ask her out. I see that.
Dr. Harper. Let's go, Dr. Harper. We've been waiting for you.
Do we have Shelby to the bathroom? Oh god, they shut the computer again. The prosecutor threw up without anybody.
Can't hear you, man.
Really? No wonder you haven't been responding.
Oh, hang on. Let me try and change your mic because you were super loud yesterday. Try again.
Hello?
Yeah, that's better.
State, you recognize our jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense, you recognize our jury? All right, thank you. All can be seated. Again, members of the jury, if you could just raise those hands, confirm you comply with the court's instructions. Record reflect all hands have been raised. All right, defense, at this time you may call your next witness.
We call Dr. Julie Harper.
Let's go, Dr. Harper.
You should get shouting the truth, the whole truth, and the truth, so help you God. I do.
Doctor, good afternoon. Could you state and spell your name for the record for us?
Dr. Julie Harper, Harper.
Thank you. Counselor, you may inquire.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I think you've already stated your name, but just introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Dr. Julie Harper, and I'm a licensed psychologist.
Would you tell the jury your educational background?
I have an undergraduate degree from Oberlin College in biopsychology. I have a master's degree from University of Denver. I went on from my master's degree to earn a psychological doctorate. That's called a PsyD. That was also from University of Denver.
She's got no
In
top
completing
lip.
that education, I specialized in psychological assessment, which means I had extra coursework in that area of learning to administer psychological tests to other people.
This woman has no top lip.
And why?
I completed an APA-approved internship at Washington State University, which means that I was matched, and that was my site to practice being a psychologist for.
What?
Like, her glasses are like all crooked.
Yeah, fix them.
Full year, and that was between 1999 and 2000. And following that, I turned in my dissertation, which was in the passing of power in couples relationships. I then graduated and started my postdoc work in Pullman, Washington. As part of becoming a psychologist, you have to have over 1,500 to 2,000 hours of supervised work as a psychologist. The person that supervised me was a forensic psychologist. So during that postdoc time, that was my introduction to forensic work while I worked at a community mental health center.
Imagine being married to her.
Dr. Harper, how long have you been licensed?
I was first licensed in Washington State in 2002, so 22 years.
What type of positions have you held as a psychologist?
Should we skip her?
Well, I was rehired at my internship site, so I worked at Washington State University College Counseling Center. I also worked two times at a community mental health center. The first time was in Pullman, Washington,
I would just
and that was during the period of time where I was getting my postdoc hours completed, and then I stayed on after licensure. I also worked in Florida. When I came to Florida in 2005, I took a position in the Fort Walton Beach area at Bridgeway Center, which is a community mental health center. And while working there, I completed a variety of psychological assessments. I was directing the testing program. I also began working doing the Department of Juvenile Justice contract work for evaluating adolescents that had gone into legal trouble and needed an assessment for consideration of program placement. I worked in that community mental health setting, doing clinical assessments and DJJ contracts and social security evaluations, and continued that until about 2010. In 2010, I opened my own private practice, which is Northwest Florida Psychological Services.
You can go to
And
2.0.
in the beginning of the practice, it was a combined clinical and forensic practice, meaning that I spent a majority of time doing psychological assessments to answer questions from physicians about things like ADHD, depression, to make treatment recommendations. I had therapy patients, and I also did, again, social security disability evaluations,
This is
and those kinds
great.
of assessments. And then over time, I began doing more and more forensic work, including receiving appointments from judges to do competency to stand trial evaluations, sanity at the time of the offense evaluations, for Circuit 1 in Florida, and I continued to do the Department of Juvenile Justice contract briefly, but then that became forbidden. I discontinued that contract.
That's
what I did is I slowly reduced my clinical practice, because when you do forensic psychology, it means you have to travel. Your individuals that you're seeing are not usually out in the community. A lot of times you have to see them in jail, so it's hard to maintain a therapy practice, and I scaled that back over time. Eventually, my practice became entirely forensic. And then in 2017, I took a job with the state of Georgia to be an evaluator full-time. I was working doing competency to stand trial and sanity at the time, the offense evaluations, and then assisting with risk assessments in the inpatient setting. I did that until 2021. At that time, my private practice was just, it quieted down, of course, from COVID, and I was not in full-time practice, so I wished to return to full-time practice with my own company, and I did that in May of 2021. And since then, obviously, the courts are busy again. We're all recovering from the COVID era and back to full-time practice.
Now,
They can slow it down if they want.
I live in Okaloosa County, and that is in the Panhandle of Florida.
And is that where your practice is currently?
Yes.
Is it fair to say you travel the state to? Is it fair to say you travel the state to do assessments or evaluations?
That's correct. I travel to a lot of cities throughout Florida, as far south as like Miami, and then of course working on.
Is it fair to say that you testify in various counties throughout the state?
Yes.
And I know that yesterday you were set to testify in Bay County, Panama City.
That's correct. I was testifying yesterday in an appellant case in Bay County.
All right. And when you finished, you drove here?
Yes, I did.
My understanding is you got here after midnight.
Yes.
What other counties have you testified in?
Well, I've testified here in Orange County, in Miami-Dade, in Duval. It might be hard for me to list everywhere. Alachua, Escambia, Santa Rosa County, Walton County, Bay County, Washington.
So just so the jury understands, the nature of your practice is you have to travel throughout the state.
Well, I do work in cases where the person is at risk of, succumbing to the death penalty, and so those cases require repeated evaluations in different vicinities. And so I have been, traveling to work on murder cases. There are psychologists, I suppose, that do forensic work that might just confine their work to one circuit or state, but I actually broadly travel.
Okay. You said that your practice is now entirely forensic?
That's correct.
You said? And you testified about what kind of forensic work you do?
Yes, so as a forensic psychologist, sometimes I am tasked with testifying about something very specific. So for instance, a person's ability to stand trial if they are knowledgeable and can go forward with their trial process. I've testified about a person's sanity at the time of the offense, meaning if they had a mental health condition that met the statute as to not being sane at the time of the offense. I've testified in sentencing hearings. I've been an expert witness for Department of Children and Families. I've testified in vocational rehabilitation hearings as their expert in what's called social investigation. That's what they used to call custody evaluations. So in numerous capacities.
And would it be fair to say that a lot of times you're appointed by the court to provide the service that you provide and you're paid by the state?
That's correct.
What percentage of your work is going to be paid by the government to do the work?
I would say that the majority of my work comes through with that court-appointed funding. Percentage-wise, probably about 90%.
Okay, and I realize you testify on occasion by the state, but majority of your time, 90%, 95% of the time, you testify on behalf of the defense?
Yes, the evaluation is complete, and either side can call me for testimony, and the majority of the time I'm called by defense.
And so you make a living by traveling the state, and generally the court system, I think they call it JAC, pays your fees.
So I make a living by performing work as a forensic psychologist, evaluating individuals, most of the time they're incarcerated in a prison or a jail setting, providing consultation to attorneys who might just have questions that would need a psychological expert to explain something to them. I also do fitness for duty evaluations for law enforcement, pre-employment evaluations for law enforcement and firefighters. So depending on the work that's needed, I do those.
Doctor, how is a forensic psychological evaluation different than a regular psychological evaluation? Can you tell the jury?
Sure. So if any of us went into a psychologist's office and had an evaluation done, it would be most likely for treatment. So things like if you qualify for surgery or you have treatment, maybe you've got a condition that you want therapy for. A psychological assessment is very helpful in identifying a diagnosis and then setting a course for treatment. The forensic psychological evaluation has many of the same procedures, but the aim is really different. The aim would be to answer some kind of legal question that is posed. So as an expert, I might be in the position to provide some education or experiential descriptions of something that a person might be
Okay, she's not talking about her qualifications anymore, guys. I turned it down to a listenable speed.
Suffering from two people that are going to make a decision. So for instance, if it's a competency evaluation, I would educate the fact finder. In that case, it would be a judge about what is wrong with the person, or if they had any deficits at all, or if they were competent to proceed. In a situation like this, a forensic psychological evaluation might be geared more to identifying, again, if there is a mental health condition present in the defendant I'm evaluating, and then to provide a jury with education about what I found in my evaluation.
How many forensic psychological evaluations have you conducted? Estimate.
Yeah.
So just as an estimate, it's clearly more than 4,000. I've been doing forensic psychological evaluations as far back as 2007.
You better be good, woman.
Have you been qualified as an expert to testify in forensic psychologist in court as a forensic psychologist?
I have.
And you said you testified for the prosecution?
Yes.
And you testified for the defense?
Yes.
Is there any difference in the work that you do depending on who hires you? Which side?
Absolutely not. A forensic psychological evaluation is an objective assessment of what's going on with the person. So you should be performing the same kinds of procedures in doing the evaluation. It should not matter who's retained you. What you're trying to do is answer a question.
Are there times when you actually do an evaluation and assess an individual, but then you're not actually called to testify?
Yes, many times that's the case. You will provide your feedback to the attorney, and then it's up to the attorney to decide if there's anything in there that would be useful to them, or if they're pursuing a certain kind of information for the court, they would choose to call you for testimony.
Dr. Harper, do you recognize Sarah Boone at the defense table with Tony Henderson?
I do.
When did you first get involved with Ms. Boone?
It would have been in around June of 2020. It was the first I heard of her case.
And what were you asked to do?
A comprehensive psychological evaluation of Ms. Boone.
And did you do that in Ms. Boone's case?
I did.
Okay. Were you given materials to review?
I was.
Is that standard operating procedure?
Yes.
You assess the client individually, one-on-one, and then there are collateral evidence or material that you also consider?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury about that?
Yes. So in forensic work, there are a variety of documents that are usually available in assessing a defendant. In this case, for criminal court, you would see things like witness statements. There might be body cam footage or just more information about the offense itself. Sometimes there's an interrogation video. So you would get kind of the legal description of the offense and the things that have occurred. I also will often get educational records of a person, mental health records, hospital records, things of that nature that would describe their biopsychosocial history to me.
Biosocial what?
And you were given materials as it relates to Sarah Boone to review?
Yes, I have it.
How many times did you meet with Sarah Boone?
So 9 times.
One for every lawyer.
Can you tell the jury what you did as part of your evaluation of Sarah Boone?
Well, we had a clinical forensic interview in which I reviewed her background history, so her early childhood. I also assessed her with assessments, meaning I administered the 3 psychological tests to her. I reviewed her prior mental health records, her interrogation video, some prior information about her legal history. So she had been previously arrested. I reviewed that as well. We had an opportunity to review the transcript of her interrogation video. So there were a variety of things that would be considered what I did with her.
Okay. So you considered some medical records?
Yes.
And did you also consider some records from George Torres' records?
I did see his hospital records.
Now, do you consider, in doing an assessment and forming any opinions, an individual like Ms. Boone's upbringing in terms of where they grew up and what their family environment was like?
Yes, that's part of gathering their background history, so biopsychosocial information.
And did you consider Ms. Boone's upbringing in forming any opinions?
I did.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so of her history, I found it pertinent that she was raised with...
Conduit 704.
What? What's the problem? What? She can't say she was raised with what?
Wolves? She was raised by what?
She was... Well, she got interrupted because she was talking about she was raised with something.
Yeah, she was raised by wolves.
Yeah.
She's a Cylon.
A Cylon?
She kind of looks like one.
Well, she lost her parents very young.
She did?
There's that.
Well, I'm sorry,
This.
The objection is sustained.
Would you have considered, as part of her family background, whether or not some of her family members had passed away early in her life?
Sustained.
I knew that was what
You
it was going
consider
to be.
the entire family background and history without going into the details of what she said or what you learned from looking at records? I'm sorry?
Yes.
And did you consider her relationship with her mother as part of her psychological development?
Yes.
Now, do you believe that Sarah Boone does have some narcissistic traits?
I do.
She doesn't qualify with the criteria for that diagnosis, does she?
I did not diagnose her with that.
Can you elaborate on or explain how you feel that Sarah Boone does have some narcissistic traits?
Well, in meeting with her as part of the evaluation, the narcissistic traits that I identified would have to do with, as she described, being a straight A student. She reiterated about her abilities, and I felt that that was evidence that she had low self-esteem, and her coping mechanism was to identify what made her stand out, and that would be consistent with a narcissistic trait.
Now, I know there's been reference in this case to a manual that all psychologists, all psychiatrists refer to. Do you have that manual with you?
I do.
And what is the name of that manual?
A manual?
It is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the text revision. So it's the DSM-5 text revision.
Now, Dr. Brandon testified earlier
First
today, and there was
edition.
some evidence relating to when you suffer from narcissism, there's a sense of grandiosity. What is that?
She did.
From
Wait,
this
wait, wait, wait,
manual.
wait.
In your-
Do we have to go back
your
because
studies,
she
your
said
experience.
she did not diagnose her with narcissistic disorder or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah, correct.
She said there was one thing that she thought was narcissistic, but apart from that, she said she did not diagnose her with it.
Yeah,
Whether-
Sarah was thinking of streaming on YouTube. That was it.
Oh, that was it. Because anyone who streams on YouTube must be a narcissist. Plus anyone who testifies.
That too.
Oh, and
Just
if you
you-
go pro se, if you
Oh,
go pro
then-
se,
oh,
you're
God.
absolutely a narcissist. No
A
question.
narcinazi.
Yeah.
Were they
Oh,
require
who doesn't?
excessive admiration and whatnot, that there's a reason for that.
Streaming is
If I'm
number one
understanding
trait.
your question, there's a criterion in narcissistic personality
I'm
disorder
waiting, I'm waiting.
related to
What
that.
I'm getting to is many times you may have these narcissistic traits, but really you suffer from very low self-esteem.
That's the underpinning of that criterion.
Would you explain that to me?
If I'm allowed to reference the DSM, then I can explain it best.
Just don't read from it. Just
All
if
right.
you need to review, if you need to read a paragraph and then explain it to the jury.
So based on the description in the DSM, if a person's self-esteem is very fragile and they have low self-esteem, they may require more outside admiration or even appear more grandiose in their abilities because at root, they don't feel secure and confident. And so it's what we would call a defense. And so that criterion is actually a way that a person tries to make themselves feel better.
Private chat.
Anything else you want to say about that issue?
Well, you asked me about why I didn't diagnose narcissistic personality disorder. And again, from the DSM,
Or the criteria?
there are criterion for each disorder.
And so when you're assessing someone, they have to meet all those criteria for you to form that opinion that they actually suffer from that disorder?
Well, the first, I guess, issue is do they have the criterion that are listed? And then the second would be, is there a different mental health disorder that would better explain the criterion that you're seeing? The criterion within the DSM overlap considerably across disorders. And so there are some helpful guidelines within the DSM to remind you of that you may have what's called differential diagnosis. So if you're considering one thing, that you also are directed to look at other things. So that happened in this case, in this instance, that the DSM guided me to also look at other things.
But just for purposes, to make it clear, you did not diagnose her with narcissism, that disorder.
That's correct, because the DSM's description guided me that would not be an appropriate diagnosis.
Why did you not diagnose Ms. Boone with a personality disorder?
Well, first of all, it has to be a pervasive pattern of distorted relational ability. So basically, if she is demonstrating in a variety of settings that she has these symptoms.
Oh.
And then secondarily, the
Sorry, I thought my
diagnosis of
sex
post-traumatic
dolls got
stress disorder is listed when you're considering personality disorders. The DSM guides you that if there are personality changes that are associated with the exposure to a trauma, then you should consider post-traumatic stress disorder and not a personality disorder.
Have you
Sounds like you're
diagnosed
the
her
narcissist.
with anything? And we'll elaborate on that, but through your assessment, have you diagnosed her with anything?
Yes, so she has a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. She has symptoms of anxiety that would be consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder. So that is an anxiety disorder.
And you feel like she suffers from post-traumatic stress?
I do.
Now, at the time of this incident, this event, we're talking February 23rd, 2020, you were aware that she did not have much family support?
Yes.
Doctor, why do you administer psychological testing?
Psychological testing allows an objective measurement of what the person's symptoms may be as compared to sort of an average. So if we can see what the average range on a standardized measure would be for any person, if there is an interpretable difference, that gives me clinical information. So it's not just relying on what the person has told me. I've got an objective measurement that I can compare to other people. And then I also administer psychological testing in a forensic evaluation to help assist me in making sure that the person is intending to put in good effort with me. In some forensic settings, a person may have a reason to present symptoms, like if they're in a custody evaluation, for instance, they might have a reason to minimize symptoms, or they may exaggerate something else. And so assessments as to the person's response to you and if they're validly participating are important.
So there are tests to see if you're faking or malingering or that type of thing?
Right, and so you would call it feigning mental health symptoms
there's
when the
tests
person
to see
is
if you're
either
faking?
far exaggerating a symptom they do have, or if they're pretending to have a symptom that they do not actually have.
Now, as it relates to Sarah Boone, what type of psychological testing did you administer?
I administered the inventory of legal knowledge, and That is a test that has to do with whether or not she was validly participating regarding her understanding of the legal process. I also administered the Miller Forensic Assessment of Symptoms test.
Explain to the jury what that Miller Forensic Assessment of Symptoms test is.
So that is also a test of feigning to identify if she's validly participating in the evaluation. So if she had endorsed psychological symptoms or psychiatric symptoms, that would be unusual or not typical of a valid psychiatric patient.
What were the results of Ms. Boone's test on the Miller Forensic?
She validly participated. There was no indication of any feigning or malingering.
As far as the inventory of legal knowledge base, what were the results?
Again, she was validly participating, and she did not even come close to the cutoff. That would put her in the range of feigning.
Can you tell the jury what the purpose of the clinician-administered post-traumatic stress disorder scale is?
Yes. So that would be considered a very useful assessment of post-traumatic stress disorder. It allows me to interview a person about exposure to a traumatic incident and then identify if there's a change in behavior that has occurred as a result of that exposure to trauma.
At the time that you administered that test, did Ms. Boone in fact have post-traumatic stress disorder?
Well,
or tell me the results.
Yes, so the results would be consistent with a person having post-traumatic stress disorder. I do not diagnose from one test, that wouldn't be appropriate, but it is consistent with the background and the symptoms that I had previously taken down during my evaluation of her. So the clinical portion, we go through symptoms. That was consistent with the outcome of that test.
And with this testing, all the testing, help you determine if Ms. Boone had a change in functioning from before the alleged trauma to after the alleged trauma. And I'm referring to the trauma. We'll talk about what the trauma was, but the trauma was the intimate partner violence?
That's correct.
Okay. But would that testing help to determine if she had a change in functioning from that trauma of the intimate partner violence?
Absolutely.
And did you determine that she did suffer from a trauma as a result of intimate partner violence?
That was my conclusion. Yes, that's my opinion.
Now, in considering all the available information, you don't just rely on what Ms. Boone tells you.
No, no, I don't. I do interview a person as part of the clinical forensic interview, of course, but I also consider things that are reported, like in the arrest narrative, witness statements, all of the medical records. So there are a variety of sources of information, collecting data points and reviewing those to arrive at a conclusion.
So you did review Ms. Boone's previous diagnoses in her history?
Yes.
Did you consider the previous diagnoses in arriving at your own?
I did, yes.
What did Ms. Boone, what had she been diagnosed with prior to you getting involved?
Must be a dop chat. Yeah, YouTube is censoring Baldo.
Oh dear. Oh, I'm sorry, Barbara. Oh dear.
Prior. Other experts who may have diagnosed her with something.
So I would definitely consider her mental health records, diagnoses previous clinicians may have arrived at the time when I diagnosed her myself.
Okay, given the assessment that you did with Sarah Boone, and considering the totality and the time you spent with her, and the other records, did you diagnose Sarah Boone with anything?
Yes, so post-traumatic stress disorder. It's my opinion at the time of the offense, she had depression and she had an alcohol use disorder.
All right. I know we've talked about post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't know if I need to ask you anything further. I think the jury probably understands that. Is there anything else you wanted to add about that disorder?
I'm not sure what the jury's already been told about post-traumatic stress disorder, but in Sarah Boone's case specifically, because of enduring, she specifically noted the time that she was stabbed with a knife as being an extremely...
Sustained.
You have viewed... Have you viewed some exhibits involving her being stabbed?
I think that we have had exhibits in common. I'm not sure what was admitted.
Have you seen the physical scar from
Wait,
Sarah
I missed
Boone being
that.
stabbed
So
in the back?
what was the
I've
other
seen
thing
her
she was
scar.
diagnosed with? Post-traumatic stress disorder, and what's the other thing? Bipolar?
Just generally, without getting specific. I think I've explained post-traumatic stress, but if there's something else the jury you believe the jury needs to know, but it's a sort of trauma that occurs as a result of one or more events.
Post-traumatic stress disorder is the psychological after effect of being exposed to a very significant stressor or cumulative stressors that make the person's behavior, thinking, and mood change. And so the change can include things like the person becomes hypervigilant, is easily startled, has trouble thinking, has trouble sleeping, so their body is in a state of agitation. It can also include changes in mood that would include irritability, difficulty relating to others, and that they might be resistant to trust easily. So those are
Stop talking about me, woman.
Yes.
Sleep deprivation is a real issue.
It's associated with things like nightmares and having trouble settling.
Now, you mentioned that you had diagnosed her with depression. Can you just give us a general
Having
understanding
trouble
of the jury of
settling?
depression?
So the persistent sad mood, including feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, having difficulty concentrating, sleep problems, changes in appetite, those would be typical of depression.
And Sarah Boone suffered from that?
Near the time of the offense, yes.
All right, can you explain to the jury alcohol use disorder? That's a fairly new name. That's 5 or 6 years ago. The manual came up with a different name.
It did, right. And so that would be, in layman's terms, you might call it alcoholism. It's a tendency to drink too much and then have some kind of consequence in your life as a result of your substance use.
And alcoholism can be, depending on how much you drink and then how often you drink.
That's right.
All that is something that you consider in diagnosing?
Yes.
The many people who suffer from alcohol use disorder, I don't know how to put this, are they in denial?
I would say that that is one of the stages of alcohol use disorder and inability to treatment. So in denial, it's because you do not want to acknowledge that there are consequences from your use, because in doing that, you might have to reduce how much you're using. So to deny means that you feel that you can continue your use without having to change that. So you want to maintain the access to the substance.
Speaking of Nick
That's right.
Mercado, we're diagnosing him now.
What is the difference between traits and a diagnosis?
Well, we all have personalities, and so you're going to have coping mechanisms that include personality styles. So for instance, even though you might not be diagnosable as something, there are times when if you're upset, hurt, frustrated, you have a mood state that's unpleasant, you're going to deal with that by using some kind of coping mechanism. So traits of personality disorders might be present in the way that you deal with inner pain, things that you don't like feeling. So some people, for instance, if they feel uncomfortable, they may cling too much or become excessively bonded to try to escape a feeling that they don't like, and that might be a dependent personality trait. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have a personality disorder, because that would have to be pervasive across all the environments. But when stressed or upset or not feeling good, you're going to use some kind of coping mechanism, and that might be one of the criterion, for instance, of the personality disorder. You would call it a trait.
And is it your understanding that this trauma that one suffers from repeat domestic violence can cause one to be considered suffering from the syndrome we call it battered spouse or battered woman syndrome?
Yes, so the diagnosable condition would be PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. That's how a clinician would label the response to trauma. The pattern between partners, the person's coping mechanism because of that trauma, that would be what's considered battered spouse or battered partner syndrome.
And you're aware that concept of being traumatized by the battered spouse syndrome or the post-traumatic stress is relevant to a self-defense case?
Yes.
In criminal context?
Yes, I understand that.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, under the battered spouse syndrome, the person would experience a trauma or a situation in which they feared harm. And based on that fear of harm, they would react in a certain way that might not be understandable to other people. So their fear is based on the pattern of behavior between them and their partner. That might not be the case for another set of people.
Now, I know that Dr. Lenore Walker is the one who first uncovered this syndrome back in the 70s.
Pause real quick.
Her research study generated the term. She was interested.
Yes.
Lenore Walker was recently brought on by the lovely, completely innocent Courtney Clenny.
Oh,
our
really?
OnlyFans model defendant who unalived her lovely boyfriend.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
She's quite innocent.
She is innocent.
Yeah.
But yeah, she got Lenore.
Lenore. Quote the Raven, the lovely Lenore.
In why battered
That's my mom.
women specifically at first, that was what was studied, didn't leave their partner because of course they're experiencing traumatic events, risks to their life, but then they didn't leave. So she undertook the original research study on that.
And just briefly touch on, because I know Dr. Brandon has this, there was 3 stages that Dr. Walker developed for that syndrome.
I think you're referring to phases that a person may go through, or the cycle of the relationship. That includes the tension building phase, in which there is the first instance that tension is building within the partner. There might be a change in tone, a signaling that there's a difference in agitation. The second is the true battering event, so something has happened between the partners that's violent in nature. And then third, there's the honeymoon phase, which is to keep the relationship intact. The batterer would engage in what's called honeymoon behaviors, like trying to repair the relationship, apologize, essentially keep the victim from departing from the relationship. So those are 3 phases.
And is it fair to say that psychologically, the abuser, does alcohol often involved in the abuse?
Yes.
And as far as the victim that's getting abused, and you say it's a cycle, is the victim, when they go through that last stage, the honeymoon stage, are they thinking, okay, it's going to be better?
Yes, the hopefulness in that, trying to believe that the behavior has changed, that they're not going to be abused again, the hopefulness to maintain a relationship, to forgive, that's part of that last stage, phase 3, is maintaining a relationship.
I don't think I've asked this. Why would someone who has been exposed to intimate partner violence perceive the likelihood of a new violent event about to appear? Why would they perceive the likelihood of that violence differently than, say, a normal person?
Well, it speaks to the pattern. So any relationship will have its own special pattern, that you have things that only your partner knows about you, or certain looks that you give that mean something, and you learn that over time. So over a period of incidents, basically, the victim begins to perceive cues that would signal impending danger. Those cues could be really subtle, just a change in tone, or some small behavior that might not mean much to another person, but it has preceded other violent acts. So for instance, if your husband decides that he is not going out that night, he might put on different clothes to stay home, and that could be a signal, like abuse and violence has occurred in his stay-at-home clothes, for instance. That might not mean much to another person, because again, it's specific to that dyad. Those 2 people know those patterns. So the victim may perceive a small or subtle change in their partner as a cue because they've become hyper-vigilant. The body knows when it's experienced a threat to itself, and it will take note. We record memories differently when we're at risk. So these subtle cues become very well memorized by somebody who's being victimized.
Now, on this, and battered spouse syndrome is a subset of post-traumatic stress disorder, which you diagnosed Sarah Boone with. When those personality changes occur, and they persist after an individual has been exposed to this extreme stress, is that when the diagnosis occurs?
The changes would be as a result of the pattern. The person experiences a change, like in their sleeping, in their hypervigilance. That's when you can diagnose it. So you can have a trauma or an experience of scary incident, but it doesn't mean that you will absolutely have post-traumatic stress disorder. You have to have those reactive symptoms that would suggest that it's present.
In your opinion, and I know you've gone over this event with Sarah Boone, this February 23rd, 2020 event. Is your opinion that she was suffering from battered spouse syndrome at the time of that event?
Yes, she had the patterns ingrained in her behavior that would be typical of a victim who's responding to traumatic events in a predictable way. So that would fit that.
And it's fair to say that because of the intimate partner and the prior violence, that you would have a heightened sense of when danger was about to occur?
Yes.
When a threat was about to occur?
Yes.
A threat of danger?
That's right.
Putting your reputation on the line there, lady.
I want to talk about placating the abuser. A victim placating an abuser. Are there predictive cues which an abuser may exhibit to a victim that result in a high level of anxiety arousal, in which the battered woman may attempt to reduce through several different means to delay the beating? Can you explain that?
Yes. So the phase of the relationship that starts with that tension building, that is a jumping off point potentially. So if you can stop the escalation, you might stay in phase 1 for a period of time. Phase 1 being that tension building phase and trying to reduce it and not allow it to escalate. So placating the abuser might include distraction. It could include substance use. It could include a change of scenery. There are a lot of things that a partner will learn to do so that they don't have the escalation into an abusive event, if possible. It doesn't always stop it.
Now, in reviewing all of the data, all the reports, medical records, and whatever reports you considered, videotape that you may have watched, as it relates specifically to Sarah Boone, are her words her power?
Her words, I would say, are the weapon that she has.
Explain that to the jury.
In reviewing the available videos that I had to review, you would see that when Ms. Boone is very stressed, when she's experiencing a high level of anxiety, she becomes short in her tone. You can hear that in her voice. There's a strain, sharper words come out. I think that that is the way that she would try to respond to Mr. Torres. You can hear that sharpness in her voice when she's very stressed out.
Now, would you agree that victims may exhibit a range of behaviors when they're suffering from intimate partner violence?
Yes.
Self-isolation?
Yes.
Suicidal thoughts?
Yes.
Substance abuse?
Yes.
And there are often physical signs of injury such as bruising?
That's correct.
Chronic fatigue?
Yes.
Learned helplessness?
Yes.
Can you tell I know Dr. Brandon spoke on it, but could you tell us a little bit about that?
So learned helplessness is when you start to form the opinion that nothing's going to make any difference. It comes originally from an animal study in which dogs were shocked, and the research study indicated that even when dogs were given an opportunity to escape the environment in which they were being shocked, if they were shocked enough, they just stopped trying to escape. So even though they had an opportunity to do so, they did not do that. That's called learned helplessness. It's the idea or belief that what your actions are going to do are not going to make a difference, so don't try.
What are intrusive memories?
Intrusive memories are an element of post-traumatic stress disorder in which you don't want to be thinking of a traumatic event, but it intrudes on something else you're trying to do. Like maybe you're folding socks or something like that, just doing something mindless, and that's what takes over your thought process. It's not something that you're...
I'm shocked myself right now. I have... What? Okay, who's shocking dogs? The fuck? Right, Justin? I'm just gonna have to sit with that for a minute. They were shocking dogs for like psychological clinical studies. What? Their brains aren't like ours, really, are they? What? Animal testing? Yeah, I know animal testing's a thing. Like, how long ago did this happen? Really? That's barbaric. I'm really stressed about that now. They test on dogs a lot. Don't Google Fauci and Beagles. What? Okay, So if I was in the jury right now, I would just be like shut off and not listening to anything else that she had to say. I'd just be like, what the hell? Dogs? Yeah, what the fuck? Dogs? Stop talking, lady. Stop it. I just need to deal with that situation right now.
Trying to think about. We could plan what we're thinking about, or sometimes if you're just having this intrusive experience, that's not what you were intending to think about at all.
Is that one of the conditions that someone may suffer when they have this syndrome of battered spouse?
Yes.
I know there can be triggers that bring on these memories. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Are there also symptoms of this syndrome where, like in the alcoholism, where you have denial that you're in the middle of this cycle?
Well, as part of the relationship, there's an element of pleasure. Like you have early on in the relationship something that binds you together. So you're remembering that, you're hoping for that. Even though the repeated cycle is going through the phases 1, 2, and 3, you keep hoping for elements of that honeymoon phase, wishing that it was better. So it is like denial. You're imagining the way it used to be. You have a recollection of that person showing you positive behaviors, and you're hoping for that. I also think it is typical for victims to not reveal to other people that the abuse is going on, and it seems like denial. In other words, your coworkers ask you, like, are you okay? Did something happen to you? You're not likely to disclose that. That looks a lot like denial. It is a denial in public of some of the private issues that you're having in your relationship, and that's because it's embarrassing. It's revealing a loss of control to other people. It's revealing that things aren't perfect. You might even get feedback that you should leave your partner, and that's unwanted because you're already having that concern in your own mind about it. And so it seems like denial on the outside to hide it.
Would you agree many people who suffer from this, they're minimizing what is happening to them?
Yes.
And they're numbing their emotions to it?
Well, to stay present and keep that relationship, it's very difficult for a lot of people because they're experiencing physical and emotional harm. So they want to numb it because numbing it means that you can keep that relatedness no matter how bad it's getting.
Do some people with this syndrome disassociate?
Relevance.
Approach.
Sarah told everyone. Did she? Half hours? I don't know about that. Did she really? Did she go around telling everybody that George was beating her up?
Objection, relevance is overruled.
Do you agree that battered women often develop the defense mechanism of being able to psychologically detach from their body during a traumatic experience?
Some people do experience that.
I'm just going to list some of the symptoms that you find in battered spouse women, just to see if you agree with these. We talked about intrusive memories and flashbacks of the past traumatic events. You agree with that?
Yes.
The severe anxiety and hypervigilance.
Yes.
The panic attacks.
That is sometimes present. It depends on how the person experiences anxiety, but some do have panic attacks.
Very low self-esteem.
Yes.
Poor body image.
Sometimes.
Feeling that they have no control.
Yes.
Okay.
Sexual dysfunction.
It can be, particularly if the trauma includes sexualized attacks.
Short-term memory problems and confusion.
Yes, that's part of PTSD sometimes.
And they can actually have physical health problems from the chronic stress. And
Okay, but so guys, just like give me a little bit of grace here for a second, because yeah, I know she told Brian, and yes, Moses, and yes, the cops, sure. But like when we say a generalized term like everyone, that doesn't sit so well with me. So these people are all people that are somewhat close, and cops being like she's running to them for help. So people don't always fit into the boxes, and like victims, especially domestic violence victims, don't always fit into these boxes. So everyone is a generalization, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, I'm not saying I'm not saying she fits into battered spouse at all. All right, I'm not. But just because she doesn't fit tick 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 doesn't mean that she wasn't abused. I think she was abused. I do.
Correct.
Fear.
Yes,
Constant fear.
that's correct.
Now, the abusive partner, the abuser, part of the abuse would be hitting, kicking, punching, choking, burning, and biting.
Approach.
The entire world knew her. Everyone. Yeah, it's when people like use these sort of overarching terms, like everyone knew this, and she always did that, and she always said these things, and same with him. Like he always was the underdog. Like she always was the aggressor. He always was put into situations where he was cut off from the world. It's just very final when those generalizations are made. It's like, that's it, done, end of story. There's no further argument around it. And you weren't there. We weren't there. None of us were there. We don't know. And that's why I'm so pleased that she has counsel, so we can hear more of the story than we would have heard if she was pro se. We would have heard just her narrative testimony, which would have been blah, 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 blah. As we know, she can't speak very well. She just rattles on. And she doesn't know the rules of evidence either. And she wouldn't have been able to get any witnesses, especially expert witnesses. It just would have been a big mess. So at least the jury can take everything in.
All right, I'm asking about common things that occur by the abusive partner towards the victim that create this intimate partner violence or create this syndrome in the woman. Hitting.
Yes, that could be an overt act.
Kicking.
Yes.
Punching.
Don't let who gaslight me.
Choking.
Yes.
Burning.
Yes.
I ain't letting anything gaslight me.
Yes.
A knife.
Correct.
Curtain rod.
Yes.
Threatening to hurt you, your children, or your pets.
Yes.
Belittling and humiliating you.
That's correct.
Taking your car keys.
That would be considered a form of control, so yes.
Controlling your money.
Yes.
Control where you go and who you see.
Correct.
And who you can talk to.
That's right.
Force you to have sex when you don't want to.
Yes.
Stalking you.
Yes.
Slapping you.
Correct.
And that's fair enough, US.
You agree victims that suffer from this abuse experience feelings of anger,
Yes, that can be in some of the phases. So,
sadness,
yes.
hopelessness,
Yes.
worthlessness,
Correct.
intense feelings of fear.
Yes.
Abusers have a tendency to have low self-esteem themselves.
Overruled. Overruled.
The abuser can have low self-esteem himself.
Yes.
Have a
Yes,
desire
I
for
love
power and
her.
control.
Correct.
Have a tendency to use alcohol or drugs.
Yes.
The Gary Oldman clip.
Abusers oftentimes have temper,
That's correct.
become jealous easily,
Yes.
very possessive.
Can be.
And actually, It's interesting you say that with the murder one charge. I'm surprised also that it didn't go for the murder one charge because prosecutors tend to go higher than they think they can get, right? Like they tend to push a little bit further than they think they can get, and then they'll put a lesser included in, right? So, but in this case,
they probably learned from Casey Anthony.
Maybe. What you think? Every prosecutor in Florida learned from Casey Anthony ever?
Well, they learned from the Casey Anthony prosecutors, and they overcharged her.
Yeah.
And day 2, I thought maybe murder 1 could have been with some of the stuff, but then the other stuff I saw, no. I'm still leaning towards manslaughter.
And that's the thing. There's an argument for manslaughter as well.
Yeah.
So I think, murder 2 is the highest that they could, there's a real argument for murder 2. Yeah. There's a really good argument for murder 2, but there's also an argument for manslaughter. And what's happened now is because they've been put on the back foot in this last couple of weeks, and she's had defense come along with something that's actually kind of solid.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, but she could potentially win over the jury with her story. Yeah, they've been left with no time to fight back, and she could walk. What's up?
Nothing.
Are you waving at me? Hi.
No, waving at my kitty.
What's this Gary Oldman clip? Can we find it?
Thank you, J-Rock.
The victims can suffer from severe psychological distress.
That's correct.
Is that what Sarah Boone suffered from?
Yes.
Oh yeah, me too, Justin. That's why I agree.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Harper, I'm showing you Exhibit 14, it's 5 photographs. Did you watch the video of the TV, the Battered TV?
I did.
You considered that in your analysis and your diagnosis?
Yes, I did.
And I'm going to show you some
Private chat.
pictures. Exhibit 12. I believe she's testified. This is where the curtain on. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Exhibit 11, are you familiar with this photograph over here?
Yes.
Exhibit 10, which is the arm. Are you familiar with that photograph?
Yes.
Exhibit 9, picture of the lady. Exhibit 8, picture of her black eye.
Yes, I've seen these.
Picture, exhibit 7, picture of her Sarah's lips and something eyebrow.
Yes.
And this is a composite exhibit 6, which is of the stab for the leg. Are you familiar with those?
Yes.
And I don't know if you've seen this exhibit 5, this is where she spilled some soup as a result of his behavior.
I'm not sure if I've seen this photo, but I've seen a medical record associated with that.
Can you call that burn?
Yes.
Chat yelling at Ella Gary.
Yes.
See with that? Looks like exhibit 3.
All right, let's see it.
Okay.
I told you. Betty. Bring me everyone. Bring me everyone.
Right. Yes, see what I mean? Everyone. Who the hell is everyone? Very good, J-Rock. Very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
2.
Everyone.
Yes.
Did you consider all those photographs informing your opinions that you've expressed here today as it relates to Sarah Boone?
Yes, under the substantiation that she has indeed experienced past instances of intimate partner violence against her.
Is it fair to say that it takes time, a number of times, to visit with someone like this to build trust?
Yes, traumatized people are slow to disclose information. You have to build rapport. You have to make sure that they experience you discussing other things without an emotional reaction. They feel easily judged, as we mentioned, have defensive denial, things like that. So you need to build good rapport in doing an assessment with somebody that's experienced trauma.
So a lot of times they're very slow to open up and tell you about the abuse.
That is correct.
And they'll actually often lie about it.
Deny it, yes, and just say that that's not the issue or they're fine. So oftentimes I'll have an evaluation request come from an attorney who's having difficulty interacting with their client, and then ultimately it's a result of trauma.
Well, that wouldn't be Boone.
Viewed everything, and I know you've seen it many times. Is there any, did you feel like you had enough
She
time?
tells
Was 9
everyone.
visits enough time for you to feel like you had enough time and information to form the opinions that you've expressed here today and give to the jury?
Yes.
That's all the questions I have.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't think she had a lot of friends either.
Good afternoon, Dr. Harper.
Good afternoon.
So you have done some evaluation work on battered spouse syndrome for a prosecution in the past?
No,
All right. Have you done insanity evaluations for the prosecution in the past?
I have been called to testify about that.
So you understand when the government obtains a court order for their expert to come in and do an evaluation, it's for one evaluation, correct?
I believe that you're saying that the government can retain their own expert, yes.
No, I mean, what I'm talking about is you just went through that you had 9 visits with Ms. Boone?
I did, yes.
And that was over the course of 8 different days, because 2 of those visits were morning and afternoon sessions, correct?
That's right.
And what we are trying to help you have the jury understand is that when you get hired by the government and the court gives you an order to go evaluate somebody, you get one crack at the apple. Is that your understanding from your past work working for the government?
No, that's not always correct. There are many instances in competency evaluations where evaluators will request additional visits if they cannot determine their opinion on the first visit.
All right. Specifically when it comes to an affirmative defense, such as battered spouse evidence and insanity, what is your understanding and your expertise?
What is my understanding of the issue? Oh,
Judge, the question.
Legal objection.
Objection?
Legal grounds.
He asked a question about battered spouse and
Grounds. Grounds.
Fort Brooks. Bring me Fort Brooks. Gone but never forgotten.
I have not heard grounds in a long time,
I know.
actually.
It requires a court order for the state to go have an evaluator go, right? Yes. All right. Now, what are the agreed upon criteria for battered spouse syndrome?
well, you would evaluate if the person is indeed suffering from a behavioral response, like a mental disorder. So first of all, has the person demonstrated that they've got a behavioral change? And is it in response to a violent act? Do they perceive threat where they've been exposed in the past? So pattern of violence, that has repeated.
Does control over another person in an intimate relationship have anything to do with it?
Yes, it can.
Does isolation have anything to do with it?
Yes.
And by control, I mean controlling who you go see, who you hang out with, so on and so forth?
Yes.
And could it involve controlling personal items of the other person as well?
Yes, it can.
So that's what I'm asking. Like in the DSM-5 TR, I believe you pulled up narcissistic personality disorder.
Yes.
And so when you do that, it pulls up and it says there's 9 criteria, and 5 of those criteria must be met to make a diagnosis for narcissistic personality disorder.
Here we go.
Now, battered spouse syndrome is not recognized by the DSM-5 TR, correct?
No, it's not a diagnosis. You wouldn't use it as a diagnosis.
And what I'm asking is, even though we haven't written it down in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, and I mean the, like the Ohio State University or something, is it written down anywhere? Can one psychologist or psychiatrist rely upon a recipe or a list of criteria that everyone else would be using in your field as well?
There is no standardized approach you must follow. In other words, sometimes if we have a statute, for instance, it would identify what we must investigate. It doesn't exist like that. There's no statute directing it.
And there's nothing written down anywhere that says, of these 9 criteria, these things must exist. Controlling your partner, isolating your partner, beating your partner, so on and so forth, correct?
That's right.
All right. Now, this kind of abuse can come in the form of emotional or mental abuse outside completely of physical or sexual abuse, correct?
So that is a component. You can have extreme mental abuse occur of a person, yes.
And if that person responds to that environmental stimuli of whatever it is the partner is saying or doing to them, they may internally view that as traumatic.
They could.
Or they may not.
That's right.
It's entirely possible for 2 people to be in a 3.5-year relationship that has physical violence, and neither one of them feel traumatized by that. Is that correct?
That's right. If they have enough supportive or positive experiences that would negate that ratio, so of positive to negative, they may feel okay.
And a man can be subjected to this sort of trauma, whether it be physical, emotional, or sexual by
Thank you, J-Rock.
That's right.
You know what that means.
And it's basically it's unique to each relationship, right?
That's right.
You changed my banner.
But trauma is in the eye of the beholder. Is that fair? Whether a negative experience traumatizes somebody is going to be in the eye of the person who experienced that stimuli, correct?
I only partially agree with you. It's a complicated answer because some of the manifestations of trauma are behavioral. So for instance, when I evaluate veterans who have returned and they may not know that they've been traumatized, their body their bodily responses that include like difficulty concentrating, they can't sleep, they're hypervigilant. The PTSD diagnosis encompasses outward manifestations. So even though they don't acknowledge trauma, you can still identify it as a clinician.
But still, somebody like a homicide detective or a homicide prosecutor can go to scenes where there are dead bodies, go to autopsies where there are dead bodies, and not walk away with any trauma, correct? Whereas somebody else might.
Right, the environmental, I guess, cues for that person, and also working with law enforcement, they become seasoned to micro traumas. So almost every police officer can remember the first dead body they've seen. So it's in their memory. And then they become accustomed to seeing gruesome scenes. They have increased tolerance over time because it's part of their job. It may not be part of their intimate relationship that they have with someone else.
Now, you brought up veterans. Is something common with PTSD with veterans something like firecrackers may set them off because it reminds them of acts of war?
That's right.
You're not suggesting to the jury today that if somebody who returns with PTSD from service and hears firecrackers is justified in going outside and just shooting bullets everywhere, correct?
No, that's not what I said.
I'm not saying you did.
Okay.
What this battered spouse syndrome evidence is helpful for is not that subjective mindset, but rather helping to explain the objective circumstances that are presented to somebody and how it might be different from somebody with those experiences. They may view something objectively different.
I partially disagree with your question because I would say that there are incidents or actual events between partners that would be a factual thing, something has happened. And then the person subjectively experiences that as, intrusive or controlling or traumatic. So that is the person's felt or subjective experience. The objective part is what happened.
But again, as a forensic psychologist, you're familiar with the justified use of force instruction, correct?
I'm not a lawyer, though, so I'm aware of it, but I cannot debate fine points of that with you. I'm sorry.
I'm just helping, I'm trying to understand what you said before, because there's a subjective component, whether or not a person believes subjectively that they need to use some sort of force, deadly or non-deadly. You agree with that, correct?
I do.
And then there's also a second component that it's objectively reasonable to the ordinary person to use force, correct?
I understand what you're saying, yes.
And what I believe I heard you mention earlier about battered spouse syndrome was originally it was meant to help understand why people stay in these relationships.
Originally, yes.
Because it may not just be intuitive to somebody who doesn't understand these things, why somebody who is abused time and time and time again would remain in that relationship, correct?
That's right.
And again, and I know you're not a lawyer, but if the law has evolved about retreat and not having to retreat and so on and so forth, that kind of changes some of the lens of this, correct?
Judge, I'm going to object.
Approach.
Objection.
Question withdrawn. You may proceed.
All right. So you would agree that, hypothetically, if somebody is running down their partner, saying negative things about them, telling them they're unattractive, telling them things that would potentially hurt their feelings, that could be an element of control of a verbally abusive relationship.
It could.
Okay. Propping one up, hypothetically saying, I'm the best thing that has ever happened to you, you'll never do better than me. Is that a potential component of the control that one in an abusive relationship might exert over an intimate partner?
Hella
Yes, to
tells
try
me
to
that a lot.
Not encourage their partner to leave them. Yeah.
I ain't your intimate partner,
Considering
mate.
gifts, hypothetically, that one partner has given to another partner, but considering it still to be your property because you gave it to them, is that a form of a potential exertion of control over an intimate partner when you give somebody hypothetically a bike, but still consider it your own bike?
Trike.
I mean, I don't think that's strong evidence of that. I think that it does happen in relationships and people do that in general, but I wouldn't say that's like
your bike, it's
specific
my
to
bike.
this.
How about hypothetically exerting control over your intimate partner's identification papers, such as a birth certificate?
So that can happen. People will hide things that are required for work, for instance,
about
like your
holding
driver's
on to
license or things like that.
Now,
Your cell phone and keys.
I'm asking yes or no questions. If Mr. Owens would like you to elaborate further, he's going to have that opportunity in a little bit. Okay.
Okay, so with the cell phone thing, right? With the cell phone thing, I am annoyed about the commentary regarding the cell phone thing.
Yeah.
He couldn't afford his own goddamn cell phone.
No. I was saying when he held on to, I don't know if you saw that part. He held on to Sarah's cell phone. Commonly would grab her cell phone and her keys and like put them around his neck, so she couldn't get them. So she couldn't leave.
Hang on, who would? Wait, sorry, say
Jorge.
that again.
Jorge would.
He'd
Yeah.
grab her keys.
Yeah. So she couldn't leave.
All right.
We may have skipped that part.
So no, okay, I forgot that bit. Sarah claimed he did that. Yeah,
Claimed.
that's fair.
Okay,
yeah,
claimed.
fair. It might
Although
not be true.
she did say that her son and husband were involved in one such incident.
Yeah. But, okay, so going back to the phone thing, right? People say that she was controlling of him because she wouldn't let him have his own phone. He had to use her phone. He couldn't afford his own goddamn phone,
Yeah.
right? Why should why should he have any more control over that phone than she does? It's her phone. Right? Now, I know that Brian Boone is paying for the phone,
Well,
but it's still
it's
her
Brian's
alimony
phone.
money. Yeah, well, I mean, he wasn't married to Brian. George was not married to Brian.
Well, I don't know.
Sarah
I
was
think he
married
was
to
still
Brian.
paying for her phone out of the goodness of his heart, but I don't have proof of that.
Fair, but Brian Boone has no responsibility to George Torres whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right? Brian is giving the money to Sarah to have the phone.
Yeah.
And I'm sure
For
so
Sarah
he can
to
be in
give
contact
to-
with Sarah
Yeah.
so that he can be in contact with her for the parental
Duties.
communication. Right? It's George having access to the phone. I don't understand how that's her controlling him at all. If he can't afford his own phone, too bad.
Yeah.
Remember when it was only one
1990?
phone per household, landline and white pages? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, everyone just... It's not a right to have your own phone or for your partner to give you a phone.
Living life in the 1990s.
Hypothetically, if one partner destroys another partner's belongings, is that
Which
a
is why
potential,
Brian Boone said,
example
check
of a control
please.
relationship?
Yes.
Because they owed him money.
Hypothetically, is threatening to or actually using legal process as a threat against your intimate partner
Oh, did he?
a potential indicia of controlling your partner? For instance, X, Y, or Z, or I'm going to get you arrested.
Yes, I would agree that happens.
I didn't know that, Masha.
I missed that part.
Now,
but that makes
I
sense.
assume you would agree that the cycle of violence that we've described,
Because-
the tension building, the blow up, and then the
Wait, this is new. What?
The defense or prosecutor said something about Jorge having Sarah not knowing, Jorge using Sarah's phone because she didn't know he had a phone. And I thought it was really weird at the way they phrased it.
That scoundrel.
Was it active, though? That's a good question.
That's a good question. Yeah, was it working?
Oh,
But-
Jorge's mom bought it for him.
No, I think Scott's joking.
Oh.
Scott, are you serious? Oh, okay. Online says that George's mum gave him a secret phone at one point.
Oh, boy.
But it's unclear if it was active. None of the phone stuff is clear.
Is he cheating on the boondog?
Like he might have been. He might have been. And this I find all of this stuff to be a bit of a distraction, although it's important we all know about it. But when it comes down to it, Scott, sorry, not Scott, the state should, I think, just be really freaking focused on that moment when she wouldn't let him out.
Yeah.
If they just keep coming back to that, moment, then I'm sure the jury would just, they could not help but find her guilty. But all this other stuff, especially the stuff about him falling, in the suitcase being thrown down the stairwell, I find that to be a huge distraction. It doesn't matter. It just does not matter. She sat there and filmed him begging for his life and then went to sleep. That's it. All this other stuff, yeah. But I'm glad we get to hear it all. They should hear it all. But the state should just be coming back to it over and over again. Anyway, let's keep going.
You would agree that just one of those cycles could be enough to give somebody a traumatic experience if they took it as a traumatic experience.
Yes.
The defendant described her first date with Mr. Torres to you, did she not?
She did.
And at the time of this first date, they had obviously just met that night at a bar, correct?
Right.
They were not financially intertwined, correct?
That's right.
They shared no children in common?
That's right.
They did not live together?
Correct.
And after this description that she provided you, which included him smashing her phone, correct?
Yes.
Hitting her, first time she'd ever been hit in her life, correct?
Yes.
And making her crouch in a fetal position on the porch for several hours to the point where it hurt her back, correct?
Yes.
Threatened to sodomize her.
Correct.
Then she described that she was all bruised up, correct?
Yes.
After that, this is the first time she had ever met him, correct?
I believe so.
There was a second date, correct?
Yes.
Jesus.
Despite not having any of that intertwinement that we went through prior to this description, correct?
That's right.
Now, it is possible, under what we discussed, right? Just that quick one date can be that little tension and blow up, correct?
Yes.
Pause.
But it's different, hypothetically.
Personally, guys, I personally wait to threaten women with, sodomy until the second or third date. And yes, I'm being facetious.
They've been together a while.
No, this was the first time she met him. Their first date. He abused her and threatened her with sodomy.
No, I didn't click with me. That was the first date. I missed that entirely.
Personally, I still don't believe chivalry is dead, so I wait for the second or third date even to do that stuff. But,
But I remember she said she couldn't believe he found her attractive. And he's so handsome, little manlet. Okay, sounds like OJ Nicole's first date.
You've been saying a spouse who is financially dependent on his or her other spouse in a 20-year marriage with a house full of kids, then a first date, correct? You would agree in severity, in the intertwinement, there's a difference.
There's a difference in intertwinement. The pattern can be exactly the same.
Now, of course, there are many different reasons why somebody will stay in a relationship that, when perceived from the outside, others would say is abusive, correct?
That's right.
The defendant described that she felt like she was making Mr. Torres a better person, correct?
That's right.
A better father, correct?
Right.
A better ex-husband?
Certainly not a better boyfriend.
Yes. And she would tell him to call his children.
That's right.
Make sure that he sent them Christmas gifts.
Yes.
And make sure he sent his ex-wife money when she asked, correct?
Yes.
So you would agree those are indicia, or indicators, sorry.
I understand.
I know you, that perhaps she wasn't necessarily financially dependent on Mr. Torres, correct?
She's just...
I'm not saying conclusion, but those are indicators.
The manlet
You're saying
version
you
of
spent
Wade
your money
Wilson.
elsewhere, that I don't need your money, correct?
No, because even if there was money that was needed by Ms. Boone, her tendency to put the needs of her partner before her would direct her to do exactly that, like make him better, make him have the availability to visit his children, send them presents, even if she's the one that needed the money.
And in her perspective, Mr. Torres needed her to do this and make him a better person, correct?
I believe that, yes.
How many years of her adult life did she describe working?
I don't think she gave it a specific quantity. We just went through a variety of her jobs that she had in the past.
And, she was low 40s when she met you? 4 years ago?
That's right.
So she'd been 18 for probably about 24 years. Did she give you a 24, right? 24 plus 18, 42?
Oh, you said for 24 years. That's why I was confused. You can't be 18 for 24 years. But 24 years ago, I would agree.
Did her work history kind of flesh out to be 24 years?
No, he did say she was 18 for 34
And at the time,
years.
in the apartment in 2020, she had not been working, correct?
That's right.
And had not been working for some time.
That's right.
And what she was doing was living off of the settlement that she had been bought out of with her husband, was lump sum, plus $1,000 a month in alimony and $100 a month in child support, correct?
Yes.
And it was Mr. Torres who would work, correct?
He worked at Ace Hardware.
When he would show up.
Right.
Sometimes he
It's a
didn't show up.
helpful
is what she
place.
indicated, correct?
Yes.
Because of his drinking problems.
Yes.
So
Did she
that's why I
describe
couldn't
to you-
get the
Well, let me strike that. She did describe to you one
adapter
instance, at
for my
least, where
toilet.
violence occurred in front of her child, correct?
Yes.
And that her child had gone to school and reported it, correct?
Yes.
And you understand
Righteous
as a forensic
bugs.
psychologist
Is
that
it
that's
a lot?
the mandatory
It was
report.
pre-inflation,
Did you
so
review any
yeah.
DCF records in this case?
No, I didn't receive.
Is that a lot of money
Yeah,
in your country?
yeah, pre-inflation, yeah.
A month? That's like a week.
11.
That's like
a month.
a month? That's nothing.
Well, she'd still
How's
have to
she
get
getting
a
along on that?
She.
How's she, like... she doesn't own that apartment, does she?
No. No. Rent. But I guess they would cover her apartment.
No, that's not for her apartment. That's how much money she's getting. So she's getting $1,000 a month for her settlement, and I can't remember what the other 100 was for, but that's it. That's her income. So that would barely pay her rent. It wouldn't even come close to paying rent on a townhome like that. You wouldn't think.
No, in 2019, 2019, yeah, that would definitely pay rent.
Okay, so what else is she living on? 100 for childcare. Yeah.
Okay.
What else is she living on? Goodness me. Is she on some sort of, like, state allowance, like, for being unemployed, maybe?
I don't know.
Maybe. Do you guys get the dole?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Maybe she's on
I
the
don't know
dole.
if she qualifies, but yeah.
I'm thinking like she's got no job and she's looking for a job.
Yeah.
So maybe.
I mean, well, it covers rent, but not booze and ciggies.
Well, yeah. So she couldn't eat, for goodness sake. So she must be on some sort of like social security or something. But that's wow. That's not much.
Do you have any DCF record?
Did Miss Boone ever indicate to you at any point in time she became too afraid to let Lucas come over to the house?
Yes, there were times where she would ask Mr. Boone, so Brian Boone, to not bring him there.
And Mr. Boone was aware of this because she would say things like that, correct?
Yes.
And at different times she told you that she would go over to Mr. Boone's house to escape the violence of Mr. Torres.
That's right.
And February 24th of 2020, the child was scheduled to be picked up by Miss Boone, correct?
That's right.
Despite everything that she was aware of and what Mr. Brian Boone was aware of, correct?
Right.
And you saw in her police interview that she swore on the life of her son that she was telling him the truth, correct?
Yes.
Yes?
Object.
Approach.
Wow.
Object.
Approach. Ms. Stricken, members of the jury, questions are not evidence, and you're not to give them any weight
Oh,
whatsoever.
hang on a minute. I want to see that.
She swore on her son's life that it was not intentional that she ended up killing Mr. Torres, correct?
Yeah.
On her son's life. And that was an objection to that. And then judge gave
Give them any weight whatsoever. Mr. J, you may proceed.
the
She's
jury
quote-unquote swore on
instruction
her
to
child's
not
life
hear
that it was
that.
not intentional. That, correct?
Before I answer, I'd like you to direct me to that part of her interview. So
I'll strike it with you. It's on video. Some of Miss Boone's diagnoses
Swore on her son's life.
predated her relationship with Mr. Torres, correct?
yes.
And so when diagnoses predate a violent intimate partner relationship, there is an independent cause, even though they may then later contribute to the phenomenon, is that correct?
Well, I wouldn't say that all mental disorders have an independent cause. Sometimes they're spontaneous or biological in nature.
Well, let's talk about hers. I mean, you're familiar with her prior diagnoses, and you went through her childhood, so on and so forth, correct?
I did.
So she was bringing some things with her prior to Mr. Torres' relationship, correct?
She had these.
Also, yes or no, ma'am?
Yes, she did.
Thank you. You reviewed some Advent health records, correct, of hers?
Yes.
And some Aspire records of hers, correct?
Yes.
And you would agree that there are times in the Advent health records where she goes to the hospital and then leaves before getting treated, correct?
Yes.
And there is a time when she goes to the hospital where she is described, their words not mine, as having ETOH on board.
Yes.
Do you understand what ETOH means?
In a medical record, you would use that shorthand for alcohol.
Or ethanol, right?
Yes.
Drinking alcohol, not the other stuff.
Correct.
And in the records that you reviewed from Aspire, she came with complaints of depression in January of 2018, correct?
That's right.
And ethanol, or alcohol, is a central nervous system depressant, correct?
Yes.
And I know you're a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, so let me know if I'm pushing you too far and you're not going to answer. But you are familiar
You're
generally
so
with the effects
condescending.
ethanol has on the body.
Generally, yes.
And you diagnoses of alcohol abuse disorder.
I do.
And in your professional life or personal life, are you familiar with the standard serving size of drinks when you're evaluating somebody's drinking? For instance, hey, I only drink 2 drinks a day. All right, well, are they 64-ounce mugs of beer or are they 12-ounce? So are you familiar in that context?
It might be a question I would ask during evaluation. What are you referring to? Is it a mixed drink? Is it a shot? Like, I try to identify that.
And do you ever ask if somebody says they drink 2 glasses of wine, well, how big are the glasses of wine?
Sometimes.
And is your understanding that 5 ounces is the standard serving of wine since it's about 12% alcohol?
I'm not sure what the standard size is, but I would ask regarding like a wine glass.
And in January of 2018, when she came in crying and complaining of symptoms consistent with depression, she had a blood alcohol level of 0.165, correct?
I believe so.
And in October of 2018, when she ended up going to Aspire, when she was found stumbling by police, she had a blood alcohol or breath alcohol of 0.185.
I'm reacting to your description of her stumbling by police. I know she approached police for help, so
Is she chewing gum?
Oh.
Oh.
Is she? No, I don't think so.
Well, she had something in her mouth then.
So there have been 2
Phrasing.
sets of records, but I believe you may have the same
Yes,
set that I
true.
received on September 27, 24. Can you turn to page 21 of 57 of the Aspire records?
mine aren't numbered, but I will.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
No, you may not approach.
Can I,
I need
Your
one
Honor?
of those signs.
Your Honor, can I get her number?
4, and just at the top, you read the first or fourth lines.
Right.
All right, Judge, I would ask that she be allowed to read that entire paragraph under the rule of completeness.
Approach.
Can she read that part where she says she really likes me?
No.
I want to skip forward a bit.
Okay.
Scroll.
That was based upon her being found stumbling by law enforcement with a .185, correct?
She walked up. Okay. So I'd have to say no, the way you phrased the question.
Ma'am, Boone was stumbling due to her level of impairment, paren .185.
Yes, I would agree.
Is that part of the records you relied upon?
Yes.
Thank you.
Who does she look like? She looks so familiar to me.
When you talked to Ms. Boone about that, she kind of just described an event of June of 2018 and blurring those two events, did she not?
No, she told me she had 2 different Baker acts.
Did she describe it as being June of 2018?
Oh, Baker acts.
I'll have to reference my interview note to find that if you would like me to.
No.
Hang on. Scott, put something in Discord about this.
Do you remember giving a deposition on October 1st at the state attorney's office downstairs?
I do.
And at that point in time,
I don't like the acts that happen.
Show her prior statement before I ask her. I think she's got a deposition behind your counsel.
I do.
Just so for the record, it's page 34 that I'm referring to. Line 16, 17.
Oh, okay. I know what this is. I know what this is. So she got committed.
Yes, I'm with you.
She got married?
No, committed.
That's when I said
Yeah,
in that
married.
position that she was describing her experience in June of 18.
And she described this experience as going to the hospital to find a pastor, correct?
Yes.
And ends up going to what we call Lakeside Bend and Aspire now, right?
Yes.
That's what I say to hell
And
every night.
What you described was she was talking about more of the violence that occurred specifically regarding a significant episode of Jorge driving her roughly in the car, so on and so forth, correct?
Yes.
All right. Those were 2 separate instances. January when she came looking for the pastor, correct?
So I'm just
yourself.
clarifying that there's a record that we started with this conversation from October of 2018, and there is a description of her trying to go to the hospital to seek a counselor. So those are 2 different instances.
In January of 2018, when she went to the hospital crying and signs of depression,
Bless you.
she indicated that was because her
Bless
husband
you.
and son had gone out of town.
Owens
and she was
gets
feeling
so
lonely and sad
annoyed.
about having lost her job a few weeks earlier, right?
There were numerous
Every time he
stressors,
says
yes.
bless you and
Nothing
somebody
mentioned about any problems
sneezes,
with somebody named Mr. Corporal.
and Owens is talking.
You're talking about January?
Owens just like, so what? And then he gets interrupted by the judge saying bless you all the time.
But that was Jay. It's Jay talking.
I know it is now. But when Owens talks, he's the one
Oh.
that like really gets like distracted by the judge saying bless you.
I find
all the
it fully
time.
annoying.
It's
And
really
just-
annoying.
it's really annoying. It's like, Judge, do you have to say bless you to every goddamn person who ever sneezes?
You know, if I was in the court, I would be so tempted to be the asshole who just constantly sneezes.
Just to like trash talk.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would too. I'd put it on. It's
Just
like,
sniff
how much
some
can I
pepper.
make him interrupt?
Like Kramer.
Yeah. He didn't say bless you.
And just make sure my sneeze is as loud as possible.
Yeah. He's absolutely committed
He's
to
never-
blessing every sneeze he ever encounters.
He's never not blessed to sneeze.
He's never not blessed to sneeze. It's like some sort of like superstition for
I
him.
know.
It's like, if I don't bless every sneeze, I'm going to hell.
Yes.
Right?
Every sneeze will be holy,
Must be holy.
purified. Maybe Judge is actually Canadian. No, he's Ted Cruz. He's Texas.
Have we no respect? Judge is trying to be the new Newman. Like, he wants to be glorified and have his own merch
yeah.
and stuff.
Bring the jury.
Crying the jury. Bless you is going
Bless
to be his
you.
new little slogan. There's going to be a photo of him with bless you written next to it. You wait.
Ted Cruz is
Words
Canadian.
Are not referencing her relationship with George on the January date.
Damn, Scott.
Now, in talking about February 23rd, 2020 with Ms. Boone, you talked to her about that on several occasions, correct?
I did.
And part of one of those conversations, at least, was about an incident that she indicated had happened the night before February 23rd, 2020, correct?
Yes.
And she indicated and told you that she had been dragged down the stairs the night before the Suitcase incident, correct?
That's right.
And in part of your review of this case, you reviewed all the crime scene photos, correct?
No, Yes.
Those include photographs of Miss Boone, correct?
Yes.
And were there any indications in the photographs of injuries on her consistent with being dragged down the stairs of carpet?
I didn't see inside her scalp, so I didn't see photos of inside, her hair follicles and this area of her head. On her outward body, there were no indications of that.
And did you ask her how it was that she was injured during this dragging down the stairs?
I don't think I went through specific injuries to her, no.
Do you agree that alcohol intoxication affects the credibility of a historian that's providing history to you, patient, or a client?
If they're actively intoxicated, yes.
We had talked, you and Mr. Owens, had talked about narcissistic personality disorder earlier.
Yes.
And that is a recognized diagnosis in the DSM-5-TR.
That's right.
And there's 9 of those, correct? 9 traits?
You're talking about the criterion of narcissistic personality disorder? Yeah.
Like page 761 on your hard copy?
Thank you. All right.
Can I close? I have digital.
Good look.
760,
Good
but
one of the criteria is has a grandiose sense of self-importance, for example, exaggerates achievements and talents, expects to be recognized as superior without commensurate achievements, correct?
Yes.
2 is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love, correct?
Yes.
3, belief that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high-status people, or institutions, correct?
So 3, just caveat, it says believes, not belief, but the rest of what you said I agree with is the criterion.
4, requires excessive admiration.
Yes.
5, has a sense of entitlement, unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations, correct?
Yes.
6, is interpersonally exploitive, takes advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends, correct?
Is interpersonally exploitative.
The Nick
7,
Recato
lacks
legal
empathy, is unwilling
experience.
to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others, correct?
Yes.
8, is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her, correct?
Yes.
9, shows arrogant or haughty behaviors or attitudes.
Yes.
Haughty?
Now, you believe that she has traits of that disorder, correct?
Yes.
Grandiose sense of self-importance?
There are indications that she feels like that or has expressed that before.
So that's a yes.
Yes.
Preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love?
No.
You remember going to the state attorney's office on October 1st of 2024 and giving a deposition?
I do.
And it was in front of a court reporter with a court reporter here?
Yes.
And you swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, correct?
I hate it when they say
Referring
that.
to page 89,
So you're telling the truth, right?
lines 18.
You can't handle the truth.
Let me know when you're ready. Are you ready?
Yes.
Did you get the following answer to the following question? Preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love? And your answer was yes?
I did answer yes there.
She does not, in your estimation, does not believe that she is special and unique and can only associate with high-status people, correct?
No.
Does not require excessive admiration, correct?
Correct.
Does have a sense of entitlement?
Yes.
Is not interpersonally exploitive?
Correct. She is not.
And when discussing whether or not she lacked empathy or was unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings or needs of others, you indicated that that might be the case, but it's not intentional.
In other words, she's not aware if she's inconveniencing others.
What?
So there was 3 of those traits, correct?
What?
Not 5, which would be required, correct? For diagnosis of personality disorder.
Intentional.
If that were the correct diagnosis, you would need 5.
All right. During your conversations with Ms. Boone, the defendant in this case, she explained to you that cheating to
That was
her
great.
means when Mr. Torres would look at pornography, correct?
Correct.
Not a real-life woman, correct?
No, not that he was engaging in sexual intercourse with actual women.
Part of the records that you did not review were the text messages that were part of the phone extraction of her phone device, correct?
That's right.
You indicated in your conversation with Mr. Owens that some of the traits that are commonly seen in abusers would be control, jealousy, easily angered.
Those could be, yes.
What other traits were just common for abusers?
Being a person who segregates their victim away from other sources of support, somebody that exhibits coercive control, meaning that they would prevent the person from engaging in activities that would be independent, so restricting their ability to have independent like life, job, money, things like that, that would be supportive of them being left, for instance. Other things would be using emotional expressions like rage to cause a physiological reaction in another person. So those could be additional descriptions.
Specifically, materials you reviewed. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Paperwork from prior cases.
A diagnosed pain in the ass.
Yes.
Medical records for Mr. Torres.
That's right.
The medical and Aspire records for Ms. Boone that we discussed.
Yes.
The crime scene photos from the incident in February.
That's right.
Pages 1 through 413 in discovery in this case.
Right.
A photograph of a suitcase and 2 videos involving a suitcase.
That's right.
And additional videos on that phone, correct?
Yes.
Such as baseball bat smash on the TV?
That's part of it, yes.
And then did you review any other videos where there's conversations between Ms. Boone and Mr. Torres?
Yes.
One prior 911 call?
Yes.
Now today you had indicated that you had reviewed the photographs from some prior incidents of violence, correct?
Yes.
When is it that you did that? Is that recently?
No, there are photos included with the
prior case packages?
Case packages. Thank you. I'm not sure what to call it. So
that's fine.
Right.
All right. And did you review any body on camera from those prior case packages?
No, I did not. I didn't have that.
Anything else that you reviewed that I've not covered?
Are you speaking of documents only?
Yes, yes. Materials other than your 9 visits with Ms. Boone.
All right. Just checking with the hunters. I'm prepared for today.
She's still prepared for
I don't know.
today.
I guess that would be part of the discovery. The investigative report is within those 413 pages.
Did you interview anybody else personally besides Ms. Boone?
Yes.
Who else did you personally interview?
Melissa Sexton.
All right. Anybody else?
No.
You didn't interview Brian Boone, correct?
I did not.
You did not interview their child in common, correct?
No.
And you didn't review the phone text messages extracted from her device, correct?
No, I didn't.
Did you review any records from the jail?
No.
And
I'm gonna leave you with Dali for 5 minutes while I go through the loo, guys.
Wait. Is it muted? What are you doing?
It's alright, I'm here. I'm just flicking it forward.
Phrasing.
Well, lucky I flicked this forward before I went to the loo.
I know. Keep scrolling.
Scroll.
right earlier, in the normal course of practice
There you
of
go.
forensic
You
psychology,
have
psychiatry,
the video
you all
though
do
if you
rely
need it.
upon the diagnoses of other experts, correct?
Okay, back in a minute.
Can inform my opinion. Yes.
And you have not reviewed any electronic communications in the form of text regarding Ms. Boone's case, correct?
No, I did not.
Or recorded phone calls of any type, correct?
Well, 911.
Other than
No, other than that.
Now let's talk about the February 23rd, 2020. She told you that they didn't really have anything going on to do that particular day, correct?
Yes.
It was a Sunday, correct?
Yes.
Did some chores, and then as a reward, they could rest after doing those chores, correct?
Right.
She indicated to you that she and Mr. Torres did not begin drinking until about 4 p.m., correct?
I'll have to reference.
Page 36 of your deposition, if you care to use that.
36?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I'm with you. Around 4 p.m.
And you reviewed the crime scene photos of this case, correct?
I did.
That included receipts for some purchases that were made at Publix on February 22nd and 23rd, correct?
That's right.
And one of those receipts was a purchase for a 1.5 liter bottle of Woodbridge Chardonnay at 12:17 p.m. on February 23rd, correct?
Yes.
Did you question her about the inconsistency of them having purchased a bottle of wine at 12:17 that afternoon and not start drinking until 4 p.m.?
No.
And did she tell you that they had any wine left over from the day before that they consumed that day?
At some point, I'm not sure if it was the day that I was going through this line by line with you in my deposition, but I am aware, yes, that there was an unfinished bottle of wine from some other date.
And then, as the receipt showed, there was 2 additional bottles of 1.5 liters of wine purchased at 12:17 p.m. and about 5:30 p.m. on the 23rd, correct?
Right.
And Were you aware of approximately how much Ms. Boone, the defendant, weighed at the time of this offense, February 23rd, 2020?
Around 100 pounds.
And in the first 413 pages of discovery, I believe, was the autopsy report, correct?
Right.
And so you're aware that Mr. Torres was 103 pounds at his death?
Yes.
Do you take into account this alcohol consumption when evaluating what Ms. Boone is telling you about the events of the day?
Yes.
Did she tell you whether or not she was intoxicated by the amount of alcohol she consumed that day?
Please silence your cell phone.
Okay.
You may proceed.
So she did not describe herself as intoxicated originally when we discussed this. So,
So the answer is no. She did not describe herself as
intoxicated, right?
Hypothetically, if she had told the jury that she was intoxicated at the time of the offense, would that affect your evaluation of her credibility in the history she provided you?
No, because that was also my opinion.
Did she indicate to you, in describing the events of February 23rd, 2020, that there was any point in time she just simply did not remember?
Yes.
And what points in time are those?
So she did not remember taking the videos of the suitcase, or the incident in the suitcase, until she was at the interrogation room, yes, and then they were going through them with her. Then she recalled that.
I'm talking about specifically with you. Did she indicate that there were any portions of the night, or day, or night, that she did not remember?
I can't recall anything specifically right now.
Hypothetically, if she has indicated to the jury that she did not remember the 9 or 10 minutes immediately preceding the first video being taken, would that be inconsistent with what she told you then?
No.
Well, she didn't indicate to you that she forgot any part of the night, right?
Right, she just didn't say that, so.
Would it affect your evaluation of what she told you about the events of February 23rd, 2020, if she hypothetically has testified that she did not remember 10 minutes before the videos?
Not really, no, because the event and the course of events that she narrated to me occurred over several hours. So when you interview somebody about circumstances of an offense, it's the usual for someone to not remember every single minute for hours at a time. I can't imagine that anybody's memory could hold that much unless they have like photographic memory or something.
I'm not asking about hours and hours, an itemization of her day's events. We're talking about the 20 minutes of the offense. Does that affect the weight that you give her history she provided you? Just yes or no?
No.
Now, what she indicated to you was the day had been going well. It was fun and games, correct?
Yes.
Conflict-free?
To her, she said it was a good day. So that's what she told me.
She said it was a good day?
Yes.
And there comes a point in time where the activities turn toward hide and seek, correct?
Yes.
And she goes up to the shower?
Right.
And when she comes down from the shower, that's when Mr. Torres is in this suitcase, correct?
Getting into it.
And she goes over to the suitcase and zips it, correct?
Yes.
And did she describe whether it was 100% zipped to you or just a certain percentage?
She said that it was zipped all the way.
And still then, that was funny to the two of them at first, correct?
That's right.
And then there came a point in time where Mr. Torres was getting mad about being zipped in the suitcase.
She told me that he was getting mad. Yes.
And that, in turn, made her mad.
That's right.
What Mr. Torres was saying was, I can't breathe, correct?
That is what's recorded on the video.
Well, I'm asking you about what you recorded her saying.
Well, what made her mad was not that he was saying he couldn't breathe. It's what he was saying that was making her mad.
Well, what else was he saying?
At the time, she said that he said something that was making her mad. And so that's the extent of what we talked about at that moment.
So you didn't elaborate what something was that made her mad, correct?
Right. She said he said something that made her mad, and that started making her mad.
You didn't find it important to learn what specifically he said that made her mad, correct?
I don't agree that I didn't find it important.
Okay. Then explain. Why wouldn't you ask that question?
Because as a person who is traumatized is describing their experience as a trained clinician, you will allow open-ended discussion of that experience. And so it's not an interrogation. You don't go asking confrontational questions at the time of their first narration.
Well, you had 9 visits with her. Did you follow up on your 9th visit?
I asked her different questions about
Did you ever ask her
confrontational.
Did you ever ask her specifically in any of your 9 visits with her what it was that he said that made her mad?
No.
She never described him doing anything to make her mad but it was words, correct?
Right.
And once she got mad, she decided that she was going to leave him in there for 2 minutes.
That's right.
Not 3, not 1, but 2, correct?
That's what she said.
And the reason she was doing that was because she wanted him to understand how it feels to be choked and what she had experienced.
That's right.
Did you ask her why she didn't let him out of the suitcase after 2 minutes?
Yes, I did actually ask her that.
And what did she say?
Well, she thought that he could get out himself. That's one thing. She said that when she was able to unzip it, it was not some significant thing. She was able to unzip it easily. So she said it never occurred to her that he couldn't get out.
You may proceed.
Wait, who's that?
And you reviewed the still photograph of the suitcase as well as the 2 videos?
Right.
And did you understand what the metadata or what the timestamps were for each of those items?
I was getting a snack.
I'm sure when I reviewed it, I saw the timestamp. Yeah.
Would you agree that 20 minutes is 10 times as long as 2 minutes?
I would.
And if Mr. Torres had not been able to get himself out of the suitcase within 20 minutes, she didn't indicate that she let him out, correct?
She did not.
She
Telling me.
described to you, Ms. Boone being she, that she was helpful to the police?
Yes.
Do you agree with that assessment, that she was helpful to the police?
In the sense that she was having conversations with them without counsel, I would consider that helpful to the police.
That's very helpful to the police.
Yeah, I would as well, sweetie.
Do you agree that she's not truthful with them?
Yes, I think that I would agree with that.
And when she described
The right
getting
way,
Mr. Torres
Scott.
out of the suitcase, she described stretching his little
The
legs.
right way or the right way?
And she
The
stated
correct
there was
way.
no fight that day, correct?
That's right.
Just wanted him to be uncomfortable.
I need to clarify. Physical fight.
Right.
Yes.
Just wanted him to be uncomfortable.
Yes.
Correct. And then there's a description of a bat and her using it to nudge, right?
Poke.
Poke. And so do we agree that that means like poking out like this as opposed to swinging it like you're a baseball hitter?
I would agree with you.
He just expose himself?
And you reviewed the autopsy report, correct?
I believe so.
Did you get an opportunity to review the autopsy photos?
Yes.
Did you question her when she said that she only poked him with the bat?
No.
Not in any of your 9 visits?
Did I question her about whether? Can you just repeat the question? I want to make sure I'm answering it correctly.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Did you ever, in considering the autopsy report and the autopsy photographs that you reviewed,
Yes.
when she said that she nudged or poked with the baseball bat, did you ever question her about that, given the severity of his injuries?
So to answer correctly, I did question her
Which-
about how she used the bat. And she reiterated that she poked and she gestured what she meant. So I did question her about that.
And did you have any questions about that history she relayed to you, given the other evidence in this case that you reviewed?
Just in contrast to the interrogation video. So that,
It didn't contrast to the autopsy photographs or report?
Judge, I object.
Roach.
Yeah, he's being a bit obtuse. Like, what do you expect me to ask? Like, I did ask about it, sir. And she said I poked at it, his hands.
Did she
So,
indicate
what
all
else
this
do you
nudging
want?
or poking with the bat was done while he was inside the suitcase?
yes,
She never told you that there was any nudging or poking with the bat when he was outside the suitcase?
correct.
She indicated that she ended up flipping the suitcase over face down.
That's right.
Did she tell you about Mr. Torres calling his brother earlier that evening?
No.
Did she ever give you a history about a loud boom occurring inside her townhouse that evening?
No.
And you never had the opportunity, obviously, to interview Mr. Torres about these things, correct?
Of course not. No.
No other questions?
Any redirect examination?
Briefly, Judge.
Yes, sir.
Whoa.
The state attorney talked to you about power and control.
How much of
That
a
an abusive
good job we
partner
did
will
with
use
that.
power and control over the victim in a intimate partner violence situation.
Yes.
Threatening someone's dogs, is that an example of someone using control?
Yes.
Taking car keys from the other party, is that an example of control?
If they're withholding, yes.
Taking a phone and withholding a phone?
Yes.
A debit card?
Yes.
Destroying a home, TVs, putting holes in the wall?
Yes.
Not helping pay the rent and other bills?
So I would say that that could be withholding, that could go under coercive control of another person.
What about violating a court order to have no contact with the person?
Yes.
That's all the questions.
Thank you. Can this witness be released?
As far as the state is concerned.
Mr. Rhodes? Thank you, doctor.
Thank you. Just allow me a moment to have it.
Collect all your stuff, ma'am. No worries.
Sorry.
No
He's
apologies
super
necessary.
needy.
Sarah, if it's okay, you can come in here, mate.
I believe that is the last witness for the day. Not pay bills as a form of control? Yes, I thought it was just being broke too. Yes, Kitty Cat would like my attention. Actually, Kitty Cat would like to be allowed out. He's in protest mode. Say hi. Hello.
Yes.
Hi. Well, guess what? Sarah's going to be found innocent. She is. She's going to be free. Unlike you, who's never getting out again. That's right. You're never getting out again. Because you went missing.
Take that afternoon break. I got a couple things I got to address with counsel as well, so maybe a little.
Now, guys, I believe that that's it for the day. There was some jury instructions and then nothing. Am I right or wrong? Kitty Cope. Yeah. This is my beautiful kitty. Anyone who saw it, tell me, do you want to, should we, yeah, I mean, how about we just, oh, hello, Mr. Dickface. Hello, everyone. Hi. We can never be sans serif again. Yeah, that's about right. What's it? No more witnesses. Yes, no more witnesses. Sweet. Yeah, I didn't think so.
Yeah, no, we're done.
We're done. So that means that's fine. Okay, so hang on. I need to just be a little bit up closer with Serif. Hello. Yeah, so Serif has been legit night times clawing at all the windows and doors and scritch, 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 scritch.
Scritch, scritch.
They outline the timeline. So, Dali, did you hear what the timeline was?
Part of it, but not all of it.
Yeah. So, defense
Scott,
has a little bit more tomorrow.
Scott, do you know?
All right. Because what I've heard is defense has a tiny bit more tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then we should be looking at rebuttal from the state.
Yeah.
Now, they have a rebuttal expert who may not have been available for Thursday, so we don't know how that's going to go.
I heard that, but I don't know if it's true.
Don't know whether or not. It's the state shrink. Defense finishes tomorrow morning, then several hours of rebuttal. Yeah. So, and body cams.
And body cams, yeah. There's like 2 hours of body cams.
That's really interesting because that means that we are not into closing arguments tomorrow, more than likely. Don't know.
The time frame is weird for this entire trial, but probably not. Yeah.
Right. Now, you know what? I'm running out of time here. I need to show this tab instead. Hang on. Whoa.
I'm going to go now.
This one. You can... Okay, bye. Jeez, you're going fast, aren't you? It's all right. Oh, hang on. No, I've only got... It's fine. It's only a minute 42. We can talk for just a second. Okay. So... yes, so Friday... It says... Yeah, Friday closing arguments. Yeah, that sucks for me. I'm not here Friday. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so Friday closing arguments.
It's only a few hours.
Yeah. Okay, never mind. All right, you can go. It's cool. We'll talk about it later. Sarah's neighbor said her husband would just say what to Sarah? 1, yo, mama. 2, yo, ho. 3, yo. Or 4, hi. Sarah's neighbor said her husband would just say what to Sarah? 1, yo, mama. 2, yo, ho. 3, yo. Or 4, hi. And yeah, I'll get rid of this now. There we go. Sorry, Owens, you got your finger up in front of everybody. Put your answers in chat, everybody. Put your answers in chat, everybody. You get the wrong number online. Dear, let's see if this thing works today properly. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So, E-Man got it first, and then Marsha, and then Half Irish. Sorry to everybody else online, you got it wrong. And Justin. And sorry, I can't see your name there. The lady who got Yo. But you got it wrong too. Oh well. Oh, it's Tina. Oh, no, it's not. It's not Tina. It's Canadian Cindy. Sorry, Canadian Cindy. Dr. Walker did not refer to the battered syndrome as what? 1, battered woman, 2, battered spouse, 3, battered person, or 4, battered man. Dr. Walker did not refer to the battered syndrome as what? 1, battered woman, 2, battered spouse, 3, battered person, or 4, battered man. Some people like battered things, but depends if it's a battering, what kind of battering it is. He used quite a few different terms, but which one didn't he use? That is the question. That is the question. It's time for some music, I think. It's time for some music. Where's my music? Oh, and Marsha again, and then Iman, and then Scott, and then Olan, and then Half Irish. Sorry, Canadian Cindy, and Tina. Well done. You're listening hard. You would think he would have referred to it as battered spouse, woman, and person. And I was going to say battered sausage, but then I thought that would be too easy. You would think that would be a little bit too easy for everybody. Dr. Harper did not diagnose Sarah with what? 1, PTSD, 2, narcissistic disorder, 3, depression, or 4, alcohol use disorder. Dr. Harper did not diagnose Sarah with what? 1, PTSD, 2, narcissistic disorder, 3, depression, or 4, alcohol use disorder. Cope is real. Dali, you could be playing this, you know. Marsha again, and then Eman, and then Online, and then Scott, and then Half Irish, and then Canadian Cindy. I can't say that. And then Tina. You know why I can't say that, Cindy? Is because I say Sydney so much. I'm actually going to Sydney this weekend. Sarah is not a narcissist. So, duh. Seethe, everybody. Seethe. The court reporter had what pattern jacket? 1, triangles, 2, polka dots, 3, pinstripe, or 4, houndstooth. The court reporter had what pattern jacket? 1, triangles, 2, polka dots, 3, pinstripe, or 4, houndstooth. I might have 2 observation questions today for fun. Yeah, were you paying attention? Who's getting this one right?
Mason.
Bing, 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 bing. I wonder. Oh, and we have Marsha, and then we have Cindy, and then we have Half Irish. Sorry, old line. Oh, sorry, I had it wrong. Houndstooth. Scott got it, and then Eamon got it. I was just assuming Marsha got it, but no. People who did get it were Scott and Eamon. Sorry, people. Sorry. From a distance, it looked grey, right? But as you got up closer to it, you could see that it was clearly houndstooth. How many clouds are in the Florida seal? 1, 2, 2, 1, 3, none, or 4, 8. Oh yeah, let's go. How much do we see the Florida seal? A fair bit. A fair bit. Oh, dear me, I don't know if anyone's going to get this. There is only one cloud. There is only one cloud in the Florida seal. Sorry, guys. Or at least no one got it, so it's not going to push anybody out. Sorry, everybody. E-Man, you were first to get it wrong. And then Old Line Red was second to get it wrong. And then Starly was third to get it wrong. Yes. I'll show you it in a minute. E-Man has won 2 days in a row. And then Scott, and then Masha. And then Old Line Red, then Half Irish, then Old Line Red, then Tina P, then Canadian Cindy. I can say if I say Cindy Lauper. If I say Cindy Lauper, I will get it right. I can't say Sydney Lauper. That doesn't make any sense. Well done, everybody. And just for funsies, I'm going to swap to this. See this? One cloud. Just one cloud. Oh, okay, calm down. See, look at that. One cloud. There is some steam coming out of the top of this boat. See, because it's a paddle steamer. Right? But it is, the king has returned. You'll keep winning every day until Sarah is free. Right? Yeah, you would think there'd be more than one cloud, right? But no, there's only one. I was going to ask how many palm trees there were, but I thought, no, I'll go with the cloud. Steam does not count as a cloud. It is not a cloud. Steam is not a cloud. It's a cloud of steam. No, it's not a cloud. Sorry. It's not Rix. Look, no one got the last one right, so it doesn't make any difference. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. And look, come back here. At least say goodbye. You got full screen. You could say goodbye. Oh, see, my serif. Look, I'll pay you attention for the rest of the day. That way you won't care about not going outside. He's like, yeah, right, fuck you. It's fine. Okay, just go then. Go. And steam is water droplets. That's okay. So if I had counted that and you got it wrong, then you'd be annoyed with me. Yeah? All right, time for the song, everybody. Thank you all for being here. See you guys tomorrow for day 5, is it? Yeah, day 5. And it'd be sweet if we could get to closing arguments, although I doubt it. And then we'll talk about how we're going to deal with the final day and verdict, because I ain't going to be here. Maybe Dali can run it on his channel, or maybe he'll run it over here and chuck it on his channel as well. Who knows? We'll figure it out. But David wants to be back tomorrow. He wants to be around for the last day. So let's see. Maybe he'll run it on his channel too. Who knows? Time for the song.
Her name was Helen. She was an RP. She was the fake lawyer from the future. She got on YouTube and made some live streams. Her co-host is Donnie and she dances sometimes. The words are always so loud and because she's an 803. To the attention, excited utterance. Her cat is